to me, it's nauseating. It's absolutely nauseating because
multiple mental health clinicians said that Derek had limited intellectual ability and was not capable of consenting.
Congratulations.
Boom. Right? Change soccer in America forever.
Hella bugs out here. Yeah, bro, I can't keep caressing my leg, boy. I'm trying to get freaky out here.
Your step siblings and also husband and wife.
I can't do any of that stuff.
That's right. Yeah, in fact, soccer can crawl up my asshole and die for all I care. And that's what the kids do, but I'm a little older. I like that shirt tucked in.
Who the hell told you that would not be seen on television?
Anal sex is the process of inserting a penis into the anus of another partner.
Oh, shit. What did Brett warn me about? What did Brett warn me?
He actually warned me. He said, make sure Derek goes live. and have we been here before 2-3 minutes ago? Not live? Yes, we have.
God, I am a total fucking idiot, Adam. I really am. I don't know what's going on. But welcome to the show. How are you doing? We'll start over.
I'm glad to be back. I'm glad we can re-talk about everything we just talked about for 2 minutes. But
I know. That was just 2 minutes, not 10 like I did with Pete.
I'm excited, man. I'm honored. I was saying this right when you realized you weren't live. I'm honored to be here. This is, a long time ago. I feel like at this point I found you guys and started watching, some of your live stuff. And it's just like super unique. I love you. You're just a character, man. And, super knowledgeable. You guys bring a lot of like mix of like, I think the comedy piece, which is so awesome. And then like soccer knowledge, inside knowledge. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, we're loving having you. This is just inside books, but I always ask two people, and I ask you and I ask Max, and you said yes first, and then Max said probably. And I'm like, sorry, Max, it's too late. Adam already said yes. So, Adam, you're on a whole lot of shows now. You're obviously on Pete and Tax Show, MLS Moves. So that's got to keep you somewhat busy, but you've kind of moved on from the basketball thing, right?
Yeah, it's fun, man. This is like hobby, tell my wife, hey, I'm jumping on a YouTube tonight. She's like, all right, have fun. And then people are like, oh, you're going to start your, I'm like, I really don't. Like, if people will have me on to talk some soccer, like that's good for me. Like, don't need to start my own thing.
Right. No, I mean, listen, this is for me. This is why Brett runs the show, not me, because I'm an idiot. And all this technical shit gets in the way. And I'm usually on the side you're on. So I moved over to Brett's spot for the day. But for people, I think, who don't know, you were a college basketball coach, right? So how did you get into soccer?
Yeah, so funny enough, I played soccer growing up. I was a, keeper through high school. Went and played college basketball, got into college basketball coaching after that for a long time, like 15 years, and was at a small little D3 school in New York where I played and then became the head coach. And funny enough, like I got tired of watching basketball when my job was basketball. And the thing that really filled the gap kind of really through the 2010s was kind of, I feel like soccer emerged in terms of like a lot of access to different leagues, between streaming and like NBC picking up Premier League and a lot of stuff like that. And it just became more accessible. Like I watched in college. I remember we had one of my roommates was one of the soccer players on our team, like a Sky Sports package on like DirecTV. So like we would watch, and I remember watching those mid 2000s Champions League games, but not like in super hardcore into USMNT since the 2002 World Cup. That's really where I got in. That was my senior year of high school. We were doing watch parties. Yeah. I kind of started watching that young crew in the early 2000s. And that's the team that really got me into USMNT. And then soccer more like 2010 to 2020 just kind of grew and grew. And I started really being like, well, I don't want to go home and watch more basketball. I literally watch film all day and deal with basketball players. Yeah. So soccer became just like an awesome way to watch something else. And then I really became really close with two of our soccer coaches who were awesome, became two of my best friends. And two guys that it's funny, like I realized how much similarity there is between certain things in basketball and soccer and how they have to be coached. Namely, like a lot of basketball coaches treat basketball like football, where they run a lot of set plays, right? And I never liked that. I always liked the idea of like, how do you create more free-flowing improvisational play, which is what soccer has to be. You can't run sets other than, set pieces. You can't run sets, right? There just isn't time in soccer. And I think the best basketball, the Warriors, the Spurs, like best basketball teams play like that too. So I loved talking with our soccer coaches about how they got players to like read the game and play fast. And so, yeah, that's kind of a little bit of my background.
I think, we saw a lot more of that free-flowing play in like the 80s and the 90s in basketball. Like, did they call plays? Yeah. If you're the Celtics, every play was, let's make sure Larry gets the ball in his hands and he shoots it up. But there are a lot of similarities in a lot of different sports. I know Bruce Arena talks about lacrosse quite a bit and how, he learned a lot from that. And I think even Bob Bradley came from that background too, in some ways. So there's a lot of crossover in sports, and it's a lot about creating space. And as you say, some freedom. And maybe that was some of the freedom we were missing with Greg Berhalter, because it did become almost like there were called plays, because it was so
100%
suffocating. And all of us that had been calling out for Greg to leave for so long, I know it's a relief, but I'm still waiting for this Poch thing to wrap up. Every day that goes by, I'm a little bit more, not nervous, but I'm kind of like itchy. I'm like, can we just get this over with now? Can pen to paper? How are you feeling?
Feel good. It's funny. It's funny you said, I just want to comment on one thing you said, because I think it's so funny. Like my high school coach, basketball coach, was super rigid, right? Set play every time down court. Like if you didn't move from point A to point B, it was like you're on the bench. And you didn't have room to like think or like do anything or react to the defense. He was just so rigid about like where he wanted you to go and how he wanted you to get there. My college coach was the exact opposite, right? And I thrived in college in a different way. And it really, to me, like, we all have different sports experiences in our life. And that's the one that, like, when I watch our players playing under Greg, it kind of reminds me of playing for my high school coach, where like I felt like, I was a totally different player my freshman year of college than I was my senior year of high school. Because high school should be easier, right? High school basketball should be way easier than college basketball. But just my college coach giving us freedom and kind of teaching us like a structure to play within and giving us freedom to read the defense and react to it and not pulling us if he doesn't like the reaction, right? And I always felt like Berhalter was like control. You hear about these 3-hour video sessions with players and like things that are just like way over the top, things that make you think he's trying to control every single part of what's happening on the field. And to me, you saw that in how the players played for him.
Yeah, they did look very constipated. And it's really the patterns of play became so predictable. And so
100%. It's like running the same 3 sets over and over again. It's like, all right, we got what you're doing.
Exactly. So I do want to answer a question, by the way, from BMR on the prior show. He said, what part of Germany is your mom from? She's from Berlin. She was born in Berlin. So I just want to get that out of the way in this sort of opening segment. And now her father was from what used to be called Old East Prussia, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now Poland. Germany had to give up Prussia, that part of Prussia, after World War II. So, does that might make my mom part Prussian? I guess. I don't know how that works. Anyhow, she grew up and lived in Berlin. BMR, I hope that answers your question. Also, and I don't know if you're a beer guy, by the way,
I am.
But P. Morton said Belgian beer tastes like lemon rinds. No, it doesn't. Lemon rinds?
Lemon rinds.
Like Blue Moon, maybe? Because you're putting too many lemons in it? That's all I can think of. But you must be drinking that piss poor white, or as the Weisse Belgian beer. And tonight, and I'm going to ask you what your favorite beers are here in a second. I am drinking the 6 Glass from Boulevard, another American company. It is a quad. Let me see if I can find the alcohol by volume. It is 10.2. Woo! I'm going to be lit up during this show. All right.
We have a brewery that's about 20 minutes from my house called Sloop, and it's awesome. They have a IPA called Juice Bomb. Just has a little bit of sweetness to it. It's awesome. That's probably my favorite beer. Also just like supporting like local. We have a ton of craft breweries within an hour of us. So that's like my favorite thing, is just going into like a local shop and just buying, local. That's kind of my thing, is like,
yeah, no, I like that too. And I think if more locals, and we do have one here called Taxman, made more Belgian style ales, whether the double, quad, or the golden ales. For me, like I had gotten bored of beer. I'd done the IPA thing all the way since college when that was first becoming hot. And I just was tired of beer. And what I was really sick of was the bitter off that was going on out there. Like, how bitter. Yeah. How bitter can you possibly make your beer? And what's this is one of my favorite IPAs. It's really the only one I like. It's the one with the fish on the cover.
Dogfish head?
No, it has something hearts. Anyhow, it's very good. I'm looking. Somebody's going to know. Yeah. In the chat. By the way, thanks to all of you. And I mean, we're only 10 minutes in, and there are already 150 of you here. So make sure you like, subscribe, share it with your grandmother. That's a good number for a Thursday when really nothing's really happened. Right? We didn't play many games yet this week. Two-Hearted Ale. Thank you, Seth Floyd. Leave it to a guy named Floyd to know that with the last name Floyd, as in two Floyds. I think they were a beer company, an independent brewery back in the early 2000s. I don't know if they still exist, but they might. So which outside of the IPAs, any other favorite beverages, potables?
I feel like I'm can you hear me right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see me talking? I can't see myself talking. I think I'm delayed somehow on my watch. Whatever. Anyway, so yeah, I see Puto. I wanted to comment on Puto's comment here. He said Blue Moon is American disguised as Belgian. I totally agree with that. I think Blue Moon, and I can't remember when it was. I think it was bought by Anheuser maybe or somebody, one of the big conglomerates. That's what always happens, right? These awesome independent beers. I don't even fault them, right? It's like, oh, you want to pay me whatever it is, $500 million to, take my beer? Sure. But then it always, just gets worse, right? Like somebody like Anheuser takes it and is like, how can we mass produce this for cheaper? And then you Americanize a really good beer. I feel like Blue Moon was awesome 20 years ago before that happened, right? But
yeah, I mean, that has happened to so many of the independent breweries. There's no doubt about it. And they're really three major distribution companies. So if you're not in with one, and they're run by the big beer companies as well, like Anheuser-Busch. I think they're separate from Coors. I think that's a different company. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like newspapers, right? We used to have independent newspapers all over the country at one point, and journalists. And now what we have is, all the newspapers owned by basically Gannett and two other companies. So not a whole lot of independence anymore. Are you back on time with me? Is that working?
I'm back. I can see myself talking at the right time now.
Okay, good. All right.
You know what else I love? I love stouts. I went to Ireland a couple years back with our basketball team, maybe 13 years ago. And I never really loved stouts, but we went to, Guinness Factory. We went to the Murphy's Factory. And they're just so passionate about it. It's hard to not get somewhat passionate when you're there. And I really developed a taste for it. I feel like that happens. You go to a culture and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I get it now.
Right.
Know how it's made. And that's a funny thing. There's a specific way that has to be poured, right? There's a gas to beer relationship, right? Where you have to fill it up almost to the top, let it settle. And then you actually have to push on the tap. If you push backwards, that's how you have to top it off. Right. And what's funny is if you're in America, they tilt the glass and pour it in, and it ruins the beer. So it'll ruin the stout. So every Guinness tap is made to be able to pour the right way. You flip it down and you let it pour for, to the harp basically on the Guinness cup. Then you let it settle. It has to fully settle for 2 minutes. Then you top it off by pushing back on the tap. Right. So I remember coming back from there and I'm every bar I'm going into, I'm hey, can I tell you how to pour that correctly?
No, I'm sure they love
such a douchebag at the bar. You're trying to tell the bartender. He's like, shut up. Shut up, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think what they refer to that at Guinness is the draft flow system or the draft flow system. And it's a real thing.
Yep.
I'm much more into more dry beers. That's why I like the Belgian ales. They have almost champagne yeast in it, and it gives you a real crisp finish. But I used to love Guinness. I did. But great stuff. If you ever visit Belgium, Adam, make sure you check out. Just go visit all the abbeys. because that's where all the best beer is made, by those monks. Those monks, they know what they're doing.
Tax Brazilian Ghost. First of all, Tax Brazilian Ghost is a great name in the comments. And I am a stout snob. That's totally fair.
Where is that? Okay, yeah. Adam is a stout snob. All right. Yeah. That's okay. I'm a Belgian snob, and I did quit drinking for almost a year. At least the beer. I didn't stop drinking, but I stopped drinking beer because I was getting fat. And that's what happens when you drink too much of that. All right. So here's the part of the show where I may be completely incompetent. So bear with me. I'm going to actually try to share a screen. This is going to be amazing. We'll see if it works because it wasn't working earlier. All right. Here we go. And there it is. It worked. Holy Moses.
Look at you.
I know. Yeah. Brett was sure the show was going to fail. So Hercules, I had to bring this up because for me, first of all, the team is Norrköping, if you don't know who they are. And I don't really get involved in fashion much, but this is old school, man. This is really old school. I like it.
Like, is that from like 1932? Like, it really looks old school. Like, that looks like something like, pre-World War II here. Like,
I know. I love it, though. I mean, if they're going to play like this the whole season, this is just a one-game thing. Man, I almost want to go watch Norrköping just to see what happens. I think it would be badass. All right. Let's see. Nothing in the comments yet I'm going to post, so we'll move on to the very sad story. And I think you may even comment on this, too, from our good friend Brian Schroeder. Report from TN Echo Sport doesn't paint a pretty picture for Matthew Hoppe. Borough are looking hard to find him a new club. They were hoping an MLS club would emerge this summer, but it didn't happen. He's not in Borough's plans at all by the fact that he's playing for the U21 team when he's 23 years old. I mean, I don't know. Do we give up yet?
I mean, I couldn't believe, it's one of those things. I saw it. And sometimes I just like tweeting before you look something up and Google it. I get we can know it. And the thing I tweeted was like, wait. This is my initial reaction here. Matthew Hoppe can play U21 soccer? I was like, there's no way. There's no way he's under 21. He was like 20 when he scored that hat trick, I thought. And then obviously people got in the comments and were like, oh, you can actually play overages or whatever, which I didn't really know. I don't follow U21 club soccer at all, but I didn't realize you can play your overages, which isn't a bad thing, right? You can get some guys some run who aren't playing. But if you're a Matthew Hoppe fan, it's certainly not a good thing. And I feel like he's been playing U21 soccer. I feel like it's been a couple of years now. I think 2 years ago he was playing U21, right? And it was like, okay, cool, he's in U21.
Yeah,
he'll move on, and he's still there, and that's a tough look, man.
Something's going on here, right? I don't know what it is, whether it's translation, like between cultures, because he's a very brash kid, right? And I happen to know the family, and I stopped talking to them for a while ago because it really hurt to talk to them about this topic anymore, because I really had so many high hopes for him. I don't know if it's over, but something drastic needs to happen. And he just needs to find the right club. And maybe in the end, Adam, he should have stayed at Schalke.
Yeah, it's gosh, man, it started with so much promise. Like, how many guys at 20 have the kind of even 1 month run that he had, right? And he looked good too. If you watch the games, he looked good. He was doing really high level stuff. Yeah. He wasn't just getting lucky and getting tap-ins. He had some really impressive goals at Schalke. And then I thought he had a really nice Gold Cup run too. I thought he looked promising, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then how do we go from there to here, man? That's what 3 years, right?
Yeah.
In 3 years. And it just, I'll say this, I got into it a couple years ago with his agent on Twitter, and his agent was, it was crazy. Tack and I realized it was, we were tweeting, some semi-negative things about Hoppe. Really not that negative. I like Hoppe. Just kind of, hey, where's his career going? What's going on? Needs to find. And the same guy was in the comments, and we went and looked at his account. It was just all responses to Hoppe tweets, right? A classic burner, no original tweets, just all. And you looked at the name, and the name was the agent's initials. Tack figured it out, and the guy actually admitted. He was like, "Oh yeah, you got me." And it was dude, can you spend some time figuring out how this guy can play at a real place versus sitting on Twitter talking to tactical manager and me about our comments about him? Like, come on. Like, really bad agent, though. Like, I think got some rough advice along the way. I thought a couple of his moves were really silly. Yep. And to your point, like, just be patient, stay at Schalke, you know, like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably what should have happened. The move to Mallorca was a complete disaster. Still never a comment, although Stu's not a majority owner, obviously, at Mallorca, but we thought he might say something about it, but he never did. And then, of course, the move to Middlesbrough, the loan to Scotland, and was it Hibernian, I believe? I can't even remember.
Yep, was it?
And that wasn't very good either. And now back to Middlesbrough and now playing for the U21s at the age of 23. Yeah, I mean, go back to the two Bundesliga where at least, I mean, Germans are loud and hard and kind of people. They're not going to get upset by your brashness in Germany. Like, it's just not going to happen. They might think you're kind of a dick or something, but they're not going to hold it against you. I really think there's something going on here about his attitude and maybe his play. I don't know because I don't get to watch Middlesbrough U21s. Okay, so how do I know? I don't know. I know he got an assist last game and it was like pulled 50 minutes into the game. For why? I don't know. By the way, the 200 of you here right now, make sure you like, subscribe, share it with your grandmother, give your stepsister a kiss. The show goes on. All right, I don't know. I mean, listen, all I'm going to end with that is I just wish Hoppe the best. I really do. Yeah. I really don't know what's going to happen from here. People keep asking, where's Brett? Brett is on vacation. That is why I've got co-host Adam with me here today. Adam Turner, also known as @Stan, U.S. Men's National Team, USMNT, right?
You got it.
All right. You can find him on Twitter. You know.
Hey, I want to give one last Hoppe thought here. And
sure.
I think it's pertinent to a lot of players. Like, I feel this way about Conrad. I feel this way about a lot of guys. I think a lot of guys, like, and this is very typical in young basketball players I would like recruit sometimes, right? Like, guys get a big head, and they're not as good as they think they are, and that can lead to a lot of tough career moves. Like, honestly, you're not easy to coach sometimes when you're like that. And I'm not even saying that's what they're like, but like, this is very classic where it's like, can you humble yourself enough to go to the level you need to go to and then do the things you need to do at that level? Not be like, man, I scored a hat trick at 20. Right. Which so easily can happen. Like, I'm playing U21. Like, you need to just go grind. You need to drop your ego and just go grind and like work your way back up because the talent was there. So you have to imagine the talent still is somewhere inside of there. And now it just becomes like attitude, approach, right? Are you willing to put in the work? All that stuff. Like,
I mean, is it possible he could be misunderstood? Sure. But he's been misunderstood too many places at this point. And not even anybody in MLS wants him, right? That's not a good sign. I'm not placing him in the Conrad territory where all his managers lit his ass up in the press, in the media, where they're like, yeah, he doesn't work hard. He's full of himself. Like, the managers actually said that to the media. None of his managers outside of one have said that. But it's very obvious at Middlesbrough, they're not interested, and nor do they think he has any future there, which is, again, sad. As Tax Brazilian Go says, ego can kill. It can kill if you're bringing more ego than you have skill. Let's just put it that way. And I think that might be the case here, although, boy, did he look really good early. So I'm just a little surprised by that, and it's unfortunate. And this is your response. Hoppe is U21 still seems impossible. Do feel like he's got to be 28. That Schalke run feels like it was 2013 at this point. I know
really,
it does.
Really does. Like, I remember watching those games, and I'm like, that was post-COVID? Like, wow, it was. Yeah.
I know. It does feel like a long time ago. And I think we had his uncle on the show here many years, 3 years ago, maybe at this point. I've stayed in touch with the family. They're great people. They love dogs. I love dogs. You know, we have a lot of things in common personally as well that are great. But yeah.
Fumar in the comments, I think that's what I think. Hoppe has a bad agent. And I think, like, at the end of the day, we just don't know enough as to like what that actually means, right?
Who is his agent, by the way? Do you remember?
I can
Okay.
remember it. I can find the name. But at the end of the day, like having a good agent, right? Somebody in your corner, because for a lot of these American families, they don't know how to navigate the European club system at all. And I feel like a lot of these agents that get these clients are American, and a lot of these guys don't know how to navigate that system. And I feel like that's like a problem, right? Like getting an agent who knows the European club system, has the right connections, can really, because you have to be able to like suss out, do they want him? Are they going to be invested in him? Right. And it's like, you got to be able to send your guys to a place that's like the right level. You have to know that level and then know your guys' talent, right? As an agent to know how to advise them. Then you have to like have relationships with people at the club to know, are they actually going to invest in him? Or are there some other motives at play? There's all sorts of motives at play, right? When a player gets bought, it's not as simple as just like everybody will get a fair chance. And then like, how does that club do with Americans? How do they do with foreign-borns? Do they loan you out the first time they don't like you? Like all that stuff is really important. And I feel like a lot of our guys are making bad moves, which to me points to bad advice probably, because all of them need advisors here, right? Like these families and players can't make that choice on their own. And I don't feel like a lot of them have very good advocates in their corners. Like,
and we'll get into a couple others here later in the show, and Testament and of course McKinney. But I think the one thing that stood out to me is like, okay, is he probably doing this at his club too? Remember during the CONCACAF, he was taken off by Berhalter, and he yelled at Berhalter, "Why the fuck are you taking me off? I'm the best player on the pitch right now or on the field." And Berhalter said, "Shut the fuck up and sit down." And, is he that aggressive with all of his coaches? I don't know. Was that just an one-time thing? So I guess I could call the family again and find out. I was hoping for some good news right before I call, because when you call and there's only bad news, it's like kind of a depressing discussion. So I'll work on that. All right, let's move to the next. All right, so I found this interesting because I don't know if this is true or not. Insiders have told Bloomberg there are several reasons why U.S. investors are slowing down on purchasing Premier League clubs. They've been scared by no salary cap, the threat of relegation, and overspending. Is that a good or a bad thing? I think a lot of English teams will say it's a good thing. They don't want Americans owning their teams. But, I mean, do you think that's true? I don't know.
I would imagine if I was a billionaire, which I can't really imagine.
Right.
I would certainly imagine there's probably a lot of places I can put my money, right? And I feel like there are a lot of examples of these billionaires at this point buying teams, and either one, the value of the team going down through relegation. I'm sure that's happened, right? Or B, like I feel like they become money pits, right? Where you just have to like pour money on top of money to like even give yourself a chance. And then you have like, the Chelsea thing's just a disaster. Some of you guys in the comments probably know more than I do. You might, Derek, but it's just like the high level of it is like a total incompetence. And that starts with ownership and who they're hiring, and then the way they're spending that money. Everybody's always like, they've spent so much money, they have to be good. It's like, sure, I could also spend a ton of money on a house. That doesn't mean everything's going to work well. If I have bad contractors, bad plumbers, they poured the foundation wrong, right? Like I could spend $10 million and have a terrible house. So it's rough, but I feel like it is like there are some high profile like money pits, right? Like who are the big ones? Like Man U, right, is owned by American ownership. That's kind of been a money pit, and they haven't been very good for a long time. Chelsea, right? So who knows if this is true or not, but I certainly could see it. I could certainly see being a billionaire and being like, maybe I'll, see if I can get in on the NBA or see if I can.
Well, I think, if you look at some of the examples you just mentioned with American owners, yes, I'm sure there's some trepidation because you're like, well, look, it's not all. Look at Todd Bowley. He spent a load ton of money, and his team sucks, or they're not very good, and they're certainly not in the top four, although Pochettino got them, in the top six. But that team is erratic. It's not just the money you spend. It's just how you have to focus on getting the right players that, the coach or the manager wants, not, And I think that's another thing that's been the problem, and probably one of the reasons why Pochettino's like, I don't want to be here anyhow, because they're not letting me have enough say in what players I need to be brought here. And so I think if anybody needs to be fired, it's Todd Bowley's advisors, actually the guys making the picks, etc. But throwing money at it is not always the solution. And I know people say, well, the biggest clubs with the most money always win. No, they don't. They actually don't. And not always they don't. Man City certainly has been very consistent, but I think that's mostly down to the manager. And Liverpool was very consistent for a long time, mostly down to the manager. And good good signings, good management of signings. It all has to be there, right? But I still think we're going to see more Americans invest in the championship. Even League One, the smaller billionaires. I think we've seen a lot more of that going on. Sorry, I just inhaled beer. Then we have, I think the MLS growth has been a little stunted by the fact that they're not sure how much their investment in the end they're going to make back when they sell the team 10 years from now. Is soccer still going to be, growing here in the United States? You would hope it would be, but there's no guarantees. I mean, the NASL totally fell apart. So, anyhow, those are
you got to be like good at hiring people too, and like I feel like that's just owners across the board. But I feel like when you're in the American ecosystem, if you're an American owner, you probably have more connections to kind of understand the right people to hire. And once again, similar to my agent point, right? If I'm an American owner and I know jack about EPL, it's like, who do I hire? You're kind of hiring blind a little bit, right? You don't know what you don't know. And then you probably have an ego and you're going to try and come in and learn it quickly and understand and inject your opinions. And it's like, get out of here. Like, you really have to kind of hire in a way that you can be hands off, in my opinion, because there's no way any of these dudes with this kind of money know anything about it, right? Like they should be like, here's how we're going to set up an organization in terms of leadership structures, whatever. Like all that stuff is probably what they're good at. The soccer stuff, like, I got to hire somebody good and just like trust them. And I feel like oftentimes, especially with Chelsea, I feel like that's not happening. I feel like
I'd agree with you. I think Todd Bowley's been more hands-on than he needed to be. Yeah. I think you go buy the team and then you go out and find guys with the best record of success in picking players and building teams. And you just say, listen, I saw your record. I got your resume. You've got a record of success. That's why I hired you. And I'm going to trust you to do the right thing. And I'm not going to get in the way. And that's probably the best way to do it when you don't know the sport. Somebody said I first suggested Hoppe to Wrexham, and even Tack picked up on it and agreed with that idea. Wrexham's got to want him. That's the problem, right? They got to want him, and they don't. So,
I mean, Wrexham has like a League One squad. I mean, they've built their squad to be like kind of League One championship level. And like, are we sure Hoppe's a League One championship level player right now? Right? I don't know. Like,
he certainly doesn't. In Middlesbrough's opinion, is not a championship level player. I think?
Know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, are we sure he can play at Wrexham? I'm really not. Unfortunately.
I mean, I'd like to believe he could play at League One level.
I would hope, but like, once again, that's Wrexham is a team that's spending like a championship team, I believe, and investing in players to kind of get to the championship. And, because of the high profile, they've been able to. They've got a number of guys who I think can play at that level just from kind of watching the show and following a little bit. And I don't know. Yeah, I highly doubt they need Hoppe, just being honest. Like,
right.
But yeah, could he play in the League One somewhere? Like, I'm with you. I hope so. I hope he could find somewhere, but
you would think so. By the way, everybody's listing all these teams owned by Americans. Yes, there are a ton of teams owned by Americans. The point of that article, however, was that going forward, there might be fewer American investors. And I'm not seeing that because I do believe generally the American spirit is to take risks. And so I don't see that really going away. I mean, there's a lot of money to be won at the end of the day. And you can invest in a League One team and spend, a few $100 million to buy the team. And then you can make it, if you can get it to bump up a couple leagues into territory that's absolutely absurd. So it's about risk. And if you're a billionaire times over, I mean, what's $300 million for a League One team? It's not much money.
I don't think so. I think Colin, I see Colin in the comments. What's up, Colin? Long time. We're not talking about League One France. I think he's thinking we're talking about League One France, but that's not what we're talking about.
No, we haven't talked about France at all yet. So
we're
not at all.
We're talking about League One, like League One, League Two.
Yeah.
Like below championship.
League, by the way. All right. So this guy says U.S. Soccer Reform says this is getting weird. U.S. Soccer, the Open Cup committee has seemingly been completely replaced in the last 72 hours. They are supposed to be nominated by Cindy Parlow-Cone and approved by the board, but there's been no board meetings with this on the agenda. If anyone has insight, please comment or DM me. So I have I've been a president of two big nonprofits, so I can tell you how this works. When you have a bunch of people resign, and there were a bunch of people that resigned on this committee, including the chairman of this committee during the whole Open Cup debacle, the board can, in the interim, put people in position, all right, without any nomination process. Now, when the members get together, they have to approve it, but that's only done once a year typically. So these people would have to be approved. So I'm just explaining to you a soccer reform that this isn't actually that weird. When we've had committees where, let's say it was a 4-person committee and 3 people had to leave that committee, or 2 people did, we just replaced them. And then we waited for them to be confirmed at the next annual meeting. And they haven't had an annual meeting, but that's when it will happen. Just wanted to explain that. But is there weird shit going at U.S. Soccer? Yeah, there's always weird shit going on at U.S. Soccer. There's no doubt about it. How about this? Brent Schroeder reports Cade Cowell has been named Liga MX Player of the Month for July. Is this real?
My Googling tells me it is, and my Googling tells me that I couldn't find another American who was ever named Liga MX players. Can anybody in the comments, like, anybody know if there's been an American who's ever been a Player of the Month? Like, that's.
I thought one time that the guy who just recently played for us that plays at America had a really bad Gold Cup. Plays right winger. I just forgot his name out of nowhere. But anyhow, I thought he won it.
You're talking about come on, comments.
Help us out.
Zendaya. Thank you.
Oh my God.
I thought about it as soon as I saw whose comment did I see there first. Yeah.
I feel so bad. All right.
I haven't thought about Zendaya in a while, but yeah, you think he won. So he won.
I think this was like a year and a half ago. I think he won Player of the Month once.
Yeah. I'm sure there has been. I couldn't find it. I'm sure, like, honestly, I'm sure somebody like, didn't Herc play in Liga MX? Like, he might have won. Like, there's probably been a bunch, but
Beasley maybe once. Yeah. Who was that? Angel says
David Ochoa, yeah.
Puebla. I'm sure it's happened. Yeah. Laverdad says, just read my comment. I missed it. I think Gomez, he says.
Yeah, Herc's a good one. I thought about that one as soon as I was just talking to. DeMarcus Beasley is an interesting one. Okay.
Yeah, maybe Gomez too. I don't know.
Omar Gonzalez. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I guess a lot what this says is that people haven't figured out Cade Cowell's trick. And it's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple trick, and yet
faster.
It's like, don't let him cut to his right.
Yeah,
don't let him do it. Once he's near the box, you just give him the left. You just let him go to his left. Don't let him go to his right. You just don't. You just say, have it. I don't care. What are you going to cross with your left foot? Good luck. But they'll figure it out eventually, unless. I mean, we saw some improvements in his left foot this season too, so maybe there's more than a one-trick pony there, but we shall still see. All right,
Kate's 20, man. Like I I feel like people are too harsh on Cade sometimes. Like, I don't think he's ready made yet or should be called up, or maybe he'll never get good enough. But I just feel like he gets a lot of hate on the X machine. Like, I feel like anytime he's playing, people are just like, I hate Cade. I'm like, he's 19. Like, can we give him? And I get why. I get that he has a little bit of that kind of old school American thing where it's a lot of pace and power and, not quite as much skill as a lot of people want, which I totally understand.
Yep.
And honestly, it's a weakness, right? And like, let's give him time. Like, listen, he's 20 years old, winning, player of the month in a pretty high level league for a 20-year-old, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
for his age,
he's where he is, right? And like, let's see what happens. What's cool is we can start to be hopefully more like a normal national team where our 20-year-olds, we don't need to like say every 20-year-old should get called up, right? Which is like fairly where we were 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, right? Like we did need to kind of call up a bunch of 20, 21-year-olds. And now our 20-year-olds can just be normal. And we can just hopefully not have to have as much weird dialogue about hating them all. And it can just be like, oh, cool, he's a good young player. Hopefully develops his weaknesses.
Yeah, I think we need to be that way with a lot of young players. And it's just a good attitude to have because, listen, you just never know. You just never know what's going to happen. Look at how we all felt about Hoppe when he was 18, 19 years old. And now he's 23 and he's a flop. And I hate saying that, but right now, that's what it looks like it's going to be unless he can turn it around. And I'm only praying and hoping that he can do that, but there's no guarantee that will happen. So you can come out a ball of fire. He's actually, K-Cal's doing better in Liga MX. He's scoring goals and contributing than he did in MLS his last season. So I don't know what that says, but it says something. And then we got this, and I think you replied to this guy. Does this guy work for U.S. Soccer? Dave Denholm?
Don't know. I mean, I've seen him on Twitter. I don't follow him, seen some of his comments, didn't look into him at all when this happened. So I'd be interested to know if anybody knows exactly who he is. But
Pete seems to think so. So that's why I brought it up.
Some comments kind of commenting on, his shilling, but I didn't look into it enough to actually know how valid that is.
So MLS Move says, your friend says, in 2023, Leagues Cup matches averaged around 135K viewers per game on FS1. That is not great. In 2024, it went down. They were averaging 30K viewers on FS1. Oh, that hurts. And he says, translation, way more people are watching on Apple TV. What? How do we know that? We got no numbers, Adam. I don't know where is this coming from?
Yeah, the streaming services notoriously don't post numbers on like anything, right? You never get Netflix numbers, you never get Apple numbers, you never and I've never ever seen a reported. They could have posted once or twice, but I've never seen posted numbers on Apple. I Googled it and was like, oh yeah, what's the viewership on Apple TV? You can't find it. You guys could Google it right now if you want. So yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just clearly like it's the ghost in the room that you can point to, right? That nobody can prove one way or the other. And you can kind of just say, if you're trying to back Leagues Cup, you can just say, hey, look over there. And everybody's like, well, I'm looking, but I don't see anything. Like I'm trying to see what you're telling me about. I've got some data over on this side. And on this side, I've got complete conjecture. Well, everybody must be watching on Apple TV. And it's like, no, like the logical thing is that the numbers that we knew last year, right? We didn't know Apple's numbers last year. I believe it was on Apple last year. We didn't know their numbers last year. We had this other data. We can see the data that we have visibility to. We can see dropping. We still don't know Apple's numbers. The logical thing is to understand it's probably dropping across the board, including Apple.
So what he's saying, since FS1 is still actually playing some of the games, right, is that they're now averaging 30K instead of 135K. And what he's saying is, well, that's because people are mostly watching on Apple. I know I watch them on Apple, and, okay, shame on me for watching the Leagues Cup. Although the 2 games last night, I was tuning in and I'd forgot all the Mexican teams had been eliminated. And so it's kind of like, oh, we're left with 4. Okay, I guess some MLS team will win it. But the fizz of it kind of went out on me a little bit. I'm kind of like, I forgot. And I thought there was still a Mexican team left. And I was going to get to watch MLS team play a Mexican team because that's why I watch it. I don't really watch a lot of unless it's it's the Galaxy, because that's my team. I'll watch that no matter who they play, but otherwise not as interested. So
I was on an interesting preview show for this with Will from MLS Moves. He just invited me on. He invited a Mexican journalist on, which is pretty interesting to kind of hear some of the insight from somebody who's, really close to the Liga MX community. And it was really interesting to hear how just disenfranchised fans and everyone in Mexico is about this, right? Not Mexican Americans, right, who are pretty excited to go see games, but the actual fans of the teams in Mexico are checked out, right? Not interested in watching. Supposedly there's a lot of reports, he mentioned a lot of reports from inside teams where players don't want to do it. They don't want to go spend a month away from their families, right? They don't want to be on the road. Some of the travel, at least last year, was insane. Teams were traveling tens and thousands of miles.
They fixed that this time, but
they fixed that, right? Travel's still tough. If you look at a couple of the teams, it wasn't 100%. For the biggest teams, it was better, but for some of the smaller teams, it was still not optimal. But it's just weird, right? We're doing this thing, and it's all here, and their league isn't honestly, their league and fans don't seem behind it. And that, to me, you kind of lose right there. Because now, to your point, the interesting thing is let's see them at their best and us at our best. And I just don't think we're getting that personally.
Right. I did see quite a few Mexican press reports hammering the teams for their performances so far. I have read those and translated them. And so, the Mexican media is definitely going after Liga MX teams and saying, you're horrible, you're bad, because most of those games, even though we're away, you were playing home games because there were more fans out there supporting you than there were supporting the MLS teams. And so I've seen those articles too, but at the same time, the Liga MX teams.
Weird timing. I think Liga MX was 4 games in. They are, just look at the standings. They're 4 games into their season. So weird to be all right, let's start the year and 4 games in, be pause. Everybody, I'm glad you're excited for the season, fans. Our teams are all going to America. And you can check them out on TV, and they're going to be playing what essentially I think amounts to exhibition style in their mind. I really don't think they take it seriously. I just don't. I don't think the fans take it seriously. I don't think they're valuing it much. And then I don't think the players and coaches do because of that. I think it becomes, I would imagine it's a lot hey, let's not get hurt. This doesn't really matter. I'm sure there's a lot of teams that are let's treat this a lot of Chelsea treats early round FA Cup games, right? Or Man City treats, it's it's a good chance to get some young players in. And I don't know. I don't follow it close enough. Somebody can tell me that might be totally off. They might all be playing their A teams. That's just how I would imagine, and even if their A teams play, I would imagine they're not going all out.
Well, I've heard
there need
that.
to be real stakes, Derek. What are the I get there is some, I think, Champions Cup spots on the line, right? But I just don't know if I just don't know if they care that much, man.
Well, I've heard that, but then I've heard others say, no, they do care, but it's just tougher to play here.
Yeah.
And because in the later rounds, for sure, or after the group stage, most of the teams played mostly starters. So they just lost and they lost. And Max Bretos was saying, no, I've interviewed all these people on these teams and managers, and this one manager even lost his job because of the performance at Leagues Cup, and they care. And so I don't know what to believe in, and I'm not inside the heads of these Liga MX players, so I don't know. But Adam, Colin Reese says Cal plays on the right in Mexico. Okay, he's played on both sides, to be fair. And one of his more recent goals was scored by cutting into the right and scoring. But you're right about this, Colin. One of his other goals not long ago was also coming from the left. And he did get a left-sided goal and an assist using his left foot. So can he do it? That's what I was bringing up. I don't know. Let's see how Cade Cowell develops, and then we'll know more. But we just need to kind of wait and see. And would I like him at some point to go to the championship or go abroad? I think that is a good thing at this point, because I do think the difference between MLS and Liga MX is not what it used to be. It's not like a huge leap to go play in Liga MX anymore compared to MLS. Yeah. It's not a huge leap. It's the differences are subtle. So if you want to make the big leap, go play in the championship or the Bundesliga, and then you'll really get to find out who you are. That's all I'm saying. All right. So we'll move on. And let me remove that comment. Thank you, Colin. Receipts, you say. Oh, you have none. Just a hunch. All evidence points to a drop in interest in ratings. Well, listen, dude, there was nobody in that crowd for that freaking Columbus Philly game. Like, the stands were half empty. So I don't know what that says.
There's been some games where there's been turnout, right? So it's not like the whole thing. Nobody's showing up for any game from what I've seen, because I've seen both sides of it, to your point. But certainly, I mean, listen, like I said this before it on the preview show. Like, what are the stakes? Like, when you just make random stuff up and you tell us we should care, we don't often care, right? This is like, if you follow golf, it's like Live Golf. It's like, check it out. We got a bunch of the best players and they're playing in this thing. And it's like, well, now if as a golf fan, I don't care about that. And I don't care about the PGA Tour as much, because it's also less important, because a bunch of the best golfers are over here doing this random thing. Some are over here. And now what do I care about? Well, I care about the majors, because I know the majors have stakes, right? So what do I know as a fan of like regional soccer? What do I know have stake? Champions Cup. I know that has stakes, right? I know Liga MX has stakes. I know MLS has stakes. Like, those are established things. And I'm not saying you can never make something up, but it just doesn't have it yet, for sure. Right. And like, yeah. And like last year they had Messi, and that was awesome. And at the end of the day, those numbers we looked at before, like, that's all Messi boosted, right? Like that's my feel on it.
I think the more highly attended games were games between MLS teams and Liga MX teams.
Yeah.
Or even Liga MX versus Liga MX teams were higher. The stadium seemed more full. But now that we've got to the semifinals last night, I'm like, wow, this it's a Wednesday night game. I get it, but this is a pretty sparse crowd for what is the semifinals of this incredible tournament. It was a little weird to see. That's all I got to say. All right, let's move on. We will go. Let's go here. 2 out of 3 metrics, attendance, and we'll finish it with this. Attendance and Fox ratings suggest decreased interest. Stated boycotts also indicate this. But if you're an MLS employee, which he's saying about Dave, just claim everyone is watching on a platform that doesn't release numbers. Shilling is such a predictable art. I kind of got into this discussion with Pete last time we saw on the show, because he was calling Max a shill. And I don't know if I'm being gentle, but I said, I don't like to use that word. What I say is Max is compromised. And I've said it to Max's face. So it's not, I think he works for MLS. You don't badmouth your employer, right?
For sure. Right. I mean, that's just like natural, right? It's like why if you watch a documentary and then you go, oh, the LeBron James documentary produced by LeBron James. You're like, okay, I got to take this with a grain of salt, right? It's coming at it. Doesn't mean it's like worthless. You can read it, but just you got to have, when you see a Max tweet, right? If this guy is working for MLS in some way, shape, or form, a lot of big soccer journalists, I just take it with a grain of salt. I'm like, I kind of understand the landscape that you're in and how you need to operate. So your opinions, I'm not always going to take, right? Like in the same way I'll take, somebody who's just a little bit more valid and a little bit more middle of the road and doesn't have interest, right? Like,
right. No. And let me give you an example. I worked for the Hope Foundation for 15 years and I had 55 employees. I was second in command. The first in command was a guy named Alan, and people used to attack him. And, because he was a hard driver, he was definitely type A, he could be an asshole. And, but I found myself, because I'd been there so long and we were friends, that I would defend him. Like subconsciously, I would defend him, even though I internally somewhere in my gut knew he was wrong. Right. It just happens. That's what you do. And not only that, you actually promote the person. And that's because that's where you work. That's where your bread is buttered. And that's just how it works. You can't even help yourself. You're like, I know he's got faults, but then he's got these positives too, you know? You line up the positives, you're like, oh yeah, those are negatives, but I get it. We're working on those with him, but look at all these positives. And that's where I think Max is. I think it's like, he's not going to say the negatives because he can't, but he knows some of them. But, he'll point out the positives first, and he does it almost subconsciously, I think. Now, he will tell you to your face that, he calls it like it is, but I don't think people understand how subconsciously that gets into your brain when you represent an organization. Maybe I represented the Hope Foundation at a higher level than Max represented MLS, but still, MLS is buttering his bread. Why would he, in any way denigrate them, is all I'm saying. So, all right, for the 300 of you who were just here, make sure you like, subscribe, share it with your grandma, and lightly, just put your arm around your stepsister and give her a hug. How's that? Just give her a hug, a friendly hug. Oh boy, hold on here. You know what this means? We got to play. Where is that? Here it is. Here. Do not panic. Do not panic. Cap them now. Cap them now. All right, we got to play that. We got to, and that's the old-fashioned Brett one, by the way.
Like
so Colio, and listen, we love the American Ultra guys. I think they're great, but he says Tim Way and Kevin Prioities are both looking like they'll be injured for the U.S. Men's National September camp. There's a winger spot open. I know just the player to take one. Here's the problem, Adam. We've asked him multiple times already to come to camp, and he said no. So I don't know how much more we can do. Do we give him a reach around? What do we do here? I don't know what you do. I really don't know what you can do. Bribe him? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like there's not much else to say, right? It's like I think we've wanted him to come in, and I'm sure we've been in constant contact with them, right? It's not like we're missing on this player. Like we've had a real, that's something we did really well under Berhalter, and even a little bit before that, right? Is we've started to have a gauge of the world market, and I think it kind of comes from the Klinsmann days too, right? That's the first time there were a lot of like dual Nats who started really being kind of pulled into the system here. And I think we figured out a way organizationally. I give US Soccer a lot of credit on that. I feel like organizationally, top down, they figured out a way to identify these people, get in contact through different channels, right? You hear about different people within the organization and connected to US Soccer, reaching out to certain guys in certain, ways. I think we don't recruit Mexican Americans very well still. That's kind of my hunch and feel. Hopefully we're doing a better job than we were 6-7 years ago when it was really bad. There were some articles written about it, and it was like we weren't even like talking to people, but there's no doubt we're talking to the kid, right? And we're talking to his people, and he's making a decision. It's like recruiting a 17, 18-year-old to college, football, basketball, right? Like Alabama fans can yell all they want that they want the number one quarterback to come to Alabama, right? But the kid still has to make the decision. And that's where we're at here, right? The kid has to make the decision.
And somebody said, let me go back to that, because I think that's something, what is it? Somebody said that Berhalter gets too much credit for dual Nats. I think if you look at Dest, that one is almost was a foregone conclusion. Dest's been playing in our system for a while. I think Musa realized he was never going to play for the English national team and made that decision pretty early on as well. The one you could give him some credit for Balogun, but I think it's the same situation. I just, as far as
this is one of those things we don't know, in my opinion. Unless somebody comes in and tells me they've got some real deal sources and they can tell me some stories and they can tell me the full recruitment tale, right?
Right.
Like, and there are a couple of those out there, but like at the end of the day, whoever the head coach is, if we can secure a player while that head coach is in, I give them some credit. I do agree with Fumar that it's like it's like honestly giving the head coach of a football program all the credit. Like most of the time, the assistant coach actually does most of the recruiting, right? Like the assistant coaches do like 90%, but at the end of the day, the player still has to believe in the head coach, who at that point and for the, undecided future is going to coach them, right? Maybe up to the next 6 years, right? Like if you're going to commit to us in the next year, you better be thinking you're going to play for Poch for 6 years. Now you might not, you might only play for him for 2, but if you're making that call, right? Let's say you're 23 years old and you're making the call to play for us right now. It would be stupid to not at least think about, am I okay playing with Mauricio Pochettino for the next 6 years? Because that could be reality. And listen, at the end of the day, we got a lot of those players when a very real reality was like potentially having Berhalter through 26, right?
Yep.
And I do give, whatever part he had in that, I do always give him credit because I think it's unfair to not give him credit.
Sure.
Because I don't like when it's two ways, right? Like, it's like, well, if we didn't get players, all of us, I hate Berhalter, right? All of us would say, well, look, our coach is failing getting dual nats.
Well, you don't hate him. You don't hate him.
I don't hate him as a person. I hate him as a soccer coach.
There you go. There we go. I just want to clarify.
Sure. I mean, I hope everybody assumes that, right?
I wouldn't assume that. No.
I know. Yeah, we're talking sports here, right? Like if I say I hate LeBron James, I don't know LeBron James. I hate him as a basketball player, which I don't. But anyway, so I don't know. You know what I'm saying, Derek? Like we go to, I see accounts do this on Twitter all the time. They literally will like talk out of two sides. They're like, well, they'll say something like, well, we didn't get that guy. Yeah, like that's Berhalter's fault, or Berhalter's got to be better. But then when we get a guy, they're like, well, that's not because of Berhalter. And it's like, well, I don't know. Like there are a lot of things that go into any kid choosing to go play a sport somewhere, you know, national team, club, college. And there are a lot of factors to that, right? It's never as black and white as this guy did 100% of the work to get that player. It's very much a community thing, but the head coach and your soccer director, those are going to be two key people in recruitment always, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people blaming U.S. Soccer for losing Esmir Bakhtarovic, but honestly, it's not like we didn't try. I mean, we did everything but give him a ball sack rub before he went to bed every night. I mean, we invite him to all the camps. You know, I don't know how much more we could do. We are reaching out to Koleosho on a regular basis and staying in contact with him. Yes, he would have to make a one-time switch. And Italy put out a tweet today that they're very focused on him, including a few other young players. The other thing is, and so I agree with that. Like, I couldn't really tell you how much credit Greg should get for Dest and Musa. I really don't know. He's certainly not getting any credit for Anthony Robinson, but I think all three of those players share, including Balogun. One thing is they had really no hope at the time of playing for their English national team. That makes recruiting much more easy. Yeah. Now, if Koleosho still believes he can play for Italy somewhere down the road, which is what he believes, which is why he's saying no right now, then there's nothing we can do. Now, why Esmir has moved on, he's talked about his Bosnian roots at length. And it's not 100%. Noah Buck has said, listen, you guys screwed me over. You know, you didn't call me up. So I'm going to go do whatever I can do to go get some playing time somewhere else. Doesn't mean I've made a final decision because he'll never make the English national team. No. Let's be really honest about that. At the same time, what's frustrating about it is that the mainstream media, this is kind of correlating, gives Berhalter all this credit for building this incredible team culture. Bullshit is what I say. These kids mostly have known each other since the youth teams. They have known each other a very long time. They built their own culture. So don't you even try to stamp on that like you had something to do with it. I just, that irritates the hell out of me. The mainstream media keeps pushing that horseshit story. It's not that Berhalter destroyed it, or he didn't, say, yeah, you guys keep building that, or you guys love each other already. So that makes it easier for me. And I'm just going to set up a system where that love can continue to grow. But that was already there. These guys have known each other.
I give Tab more credit. I mean, he was like, he was at the U20 level for like a decade. Yep. And like, he saw all of these guys come through the U20s. And like, I think that's something that's slept on and not talked about enough, right? Is like that. I loved those U20 World Cups. I watched, I think, almost every single one that he coached, and like they were just so fun. And obviously, we had really good young talent in those teams, and it's not like we won or even made a final, but like we were really competitive, and it was fun to see us like compete at a really high level with some big nations at that age group. And I think he did more, than any head coach, in terms of helping to develop the culture that these players, are playing within.
Sorry, Jeff, we missed your super chat. And I missed another one too from Frank, and I will get to it. I am not Brett. I am not good at this. All right, Jeff Carey for $4.99. Tact and Pete are doing a shirtless watch along for the League's Cup final. I mean, Jeff, I don't think that's really happening.
I don't know if that's going to like draw the viewers that they think it will.
Right. And between the four of us, they certainly could do it before we could, Adam.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're larger mammals, so
I would stay down here, probably like right about here.
Yeah, I certainly would not be putting my moobs up there for all the world to see, although they are smaller than they used to be. And then here we go. We missed this one too. Frank Castle for $2. BJ is the hero who planned the best soccer and Ballo. BJ. Yeah, okay. So the Balogun thing didn't even happen while Greg was the coach.
Yep.
So that was you guys out there recruiting Balogun. And the, Southgate basically pissing on Balogun's leg and giving him nowhere else or no other choice. And him making what I would consider to be generally an early decision on what team he was going to play for. He didn't have to do that. He was just upset. He felt like his season in France was ignored. And so, yeah, he made the move. Let's see if I missed anything else, because I was off the comments for a segment while we spoke. All right, I think we're up to date. If I missed anything, people let me know if I missed a super chat.
Hey, do you think this is my one last thing about Koleosho? So I think that I'm interested to see, like, when Poch is in the mix, how much like the aura and the status of having somebody like that can pull. It's really, I mean, you guys can list some other names. He's like the big outstanding one out there for me, at least who I feel like can have immediate national team impact of some sort in the short term. I can't think of any others offhand. I'm probably missing somebody, but like, does having Poch, right, and having Poch have those conversations and talk about maybe what a vision for him for the next 2 years is like what does that do to him as well, right? And at this point, if I'm Luca, I'm waiting for that. I'm like, well, I want to know who's the next coach, and let me talk to that person. And so who knows? Maybe there's a commitment in store in the next 6 months, after Poch kind of officially comes on.
No, I mean, there's no doubt that having a coach of that high stature will help recruit. And I don't know who's really second in command in that, and twizzling the sticks to create those meetings between players and Poch. We'll see how that all works out. That'll probably be a staff thing they're going to have to rearrange, because he's going to be traveling a lot, watching players play, and but he'll have a lot of free time too. So you would think he'd be able to make some phone calls, and I'm sure he will make some phone calls. So if you're Pochettino, I mean, geez, and you're calling Koleosho, who's picking up the phone to talk to you at the very least. If you picked up the phone when Berhalter called, you're definitely picking up the phone when Pochettino calls. So
John's comment that you put down there is totally fair too, right? Like, not a guy, and I watched a decent amount of him last year.
Me too.
Not a guy who's coming in and like, changing the game for us at all. And honestly, like, if he wasn't a dual nat, might not even fully be ready to be called in yet. And that's all totally fair. I do think his upside is unlike many of our like U20 players right now. I just don't think we have many guys at that age group, 18 to 20 specifically, who, have like he has a lot of upside, right? He can do things with the ball. And I think he's, creative in a way that we just don't have that many, wingers in that young age pool who can do what he does. So, I
mean, he definitely had some moments last season before getting injured that were impressive. And he's playing for an EPL team, so that immediately gets him near the top, I think, of at least a discussion. But in the very end of all of this, folks, he's got to want to play for us. he's got to, inside internalize the fact that the dream for playing for Italy is over. And he's got to say to himself, as Balogun did, as Musa did, as Anthony Robinson did, they internalized, they said, what? I love my country, England, in Robinson's, but I also I have American connections and I love that too. And I'm going to go play for the USA. And it's okay to have a kind of a quandary about that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sorry. There just isn't. People don't understand how complicated that is to be a dual nat.
For sure.
We often say, well, it's all USA or you're out. No, that's not how it works. I think there's a thought process. You can love two countries at the same time. It is very, very possible to do. So there you go. All right, we'll move on to what are we moving on to? What do we got here? Mauricio Pochettino needs to do everything in his power to convince Lukaku. So it's more of the same from American Ultras. And this is what of course he's got to do all that he's got to do to switch. But it's no guarantee, even if he does all the right things and makes the phone calls, that Koleosho's going to come and play in the next friendly window, because he's going to have to make that one-time switch. And once he's done it, then he's locked in, right? So it's a big decision for him. It really is.
Dual net recruitment's interesting to me. It's like I have a really good friend who's at the Division I football level, and he, kind of came up in coaching with him for a long time, and like talking to him about D1 football recruiting is like crazy. Some of you guys probably know they have 100 guys on their roster, right? They're scholarship in, I don't know what it is, 80 guys. It's like insane though, right? As a basketball coach, it's crazy. It's like, oh, I need to get 12 guys. They're like, I need to get 12 guys every position, and it's a lot of the, a lot of what how he would kind of explain it is he'd be like, I just need as many like dice rolls as I can, right? Because at the end of the day, especially with football, which is hard to recruit, they don't play as many games as like basketball or soccer. You can see like film when you bring them to camps. Like it's like, all right, I got like some numbers on how they ran a 40, and I've got a little bit of film, and it's like, all right, which of these DNs is better? And they just he'll tell you, we'll pretend like we know, and unless it's really obvious, we don't. So go get 4 of them, and one of them turns out to be the guy, right? And to me, that's kind of like dual net recruitment. Sure, there are going to be some guys who are more sure things, but oftentimes it's like, well, let's just go get 5. We got to get 5 wingers, and one of them will turn out to be a really good 27-year-old, and like at the end of the day, I'm glad we're moving a little bit more toward that, where all of our hopes and dreams aren't in one guy. And it's like, hey, we've got a little bit more of a pool. And like, that's to me the value of somebody like Koleosho, who's good. There is no guarantee, guys, that he's an awesome 25-year-old. I'm sorry. There's just not. Like,
there's not. No.
I know there's a lot of promise there. And I see in the chat, a lot of people are really high on him, which is totally fair, but it's just not a guarantee. At the end of the day, like getting him, the value of getting him is we have a shot at having a player who 5 years from now, 6 years from now could be really impactful, but there's just no guarantee. And I don't think he's 100% our third best winger. I saw a couple of people say that. I just don't think that's true. Like maybe and I agree, winger after 2 guys is a little weak, but I don't know if he's the third best guy for sure. I think it's an interesting combo to have.
He hasn't proven it yet because of the injury, right? Had he played a full season last season, I think we could definitely say that. He is back, so we're going to get to see more of him this season. I think he's definitely in the discussion of the top 3-4. I think he's probably better than Prioities as far as ceiling goes, but we'll see. Sure. As you said, there's no guarantee, because guess what can also happen, people? He gets injured again and again and again. And that can be, and listen, as many Thomas Doolies as we have called up for the U.S. men's national team that were dual nets, we've also got the David Regis that we called up, right? And this is going back to the 80s, so I might be dating myself here. But like, they don't all work out, and sometimes they just don't want to come to the team. They don't want to be on the team. They have dreams of Italy. I don't know when his dream will subside. And when it does, then maybe he'll consider us. But right now, it seems like he's still interested in Italy, but we're not going to quit asking him. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to continue to ask him, and he's going to continue to give us an answer, and we're going to have to live with that, right? There you go. That's all we can do at this point. There's no forcing a guy to sign something.
His upside's awesome. Like, and will his upside turn into somebody who in a year and a half this year has an awesome year in the championship? Maybe, he's got a goal in 2 games right now. My point is, it's just not for sure, right? But I certainly feel similar to him, just so everybody kind of understands where I am. I feel similar to him to how I felt about Ballo when Ballo was kind of a prospect, right? And I think, kind of just coming up right before his first year in France. He's that level prospect. I agree. But once again, is he ready to start at winger for us right now? I'm not sure. I need to see more personally.
Well, I mean, the only thing I would say is I would add this: outside of Pulisic and Weah, there's just not a lot there
No, it's
right
weak.
now.
I mean, it's weak. I mean, it's a bunch of guys that are either role players or also kind of prospects.
Prioities. We've talked about Aronson, who can play out there. You can play Rana out there too, but I don't want him out there. So yeah, we'll see. And we don't really know how Pochettino's going to set up yet. I mean, we have some idea based on his past. I think Haji's got to get a shot there. I'm interested to see if Poch does that too. I mean, I feel like at this point in time, right now in the current state, before any of those guys develop, I feel like it at least has to be tried, right? Like, because Weah might get a red card, might get hurt, which I think he is right now, right? Like, you've got to have other options that are like ready to go in the short term and not, hope that a young guy comes along fast enough. Right. No, I agree. All right. Tuberculosis says for $2, is Jack Harrison still available to switch over? I don't know. And I don't think that's really something.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, it's not a bad idea if you're really desperate. I don't think Jack Harrison has snowball's chance in hell playing for England, but I don't think he lived in the United States long enough to get citizenship.
How old is Jack? Is he 30?
No, he's got to be like 27, 28. I don't know. You can look it up. But I
think 28. Yeah, I think 28. Okay.
I don't think he's quite.
Almost 28. You're right. You're actually spot on. In my brain, I was like, is he turning 30?
No, he's not quite that old yet. Oh, we got another thing to play. Hold on. Where is it? Here we go.
Transfer news. Who's getting mounted on transfer news? Who's getting over on transfer news? Transfer news. Everyone loves that transfer news but me. Whatever.
All right, I got a whole chorus of people there to sing that with me. No, it's just all me singing it over and over again.
I love it.
So let me get the comments back on. I'm not very good at this, so just everybody be patient with me, okay? All right, I'm going to hide this current comment. There we go. I'm going to check real quick and see if I missed anything or anybody. And by the way, I called the guy named TB tuberculosis because that's the short letters for tuberculosis, TB. And let's now look at what the transfer news is. The transfer news. Okay, understand that Wes McKennie is on the verge to sign a new contract with Juventus probably this week. Last details to be clarified. You know what this is? You know what this is, Adam? This is Juventus calling his bluff and him losing and him settling.
Yeah.
Yep. Did you hear what the deal was? 2.5?
That's crazy, man.
Salary? Yeah.
That's crazy.
So this is him fighting a battle, all uphill, pissing a bunch of people off. No real suitors who could pay what Juventus was demanding for the deal. And no one that could pay his agent what he wanted in the percentage of the deal. And no one willing to pay him more in salary for the deal. And so he is what's called fugged. And the gig is up. And now he was on the bench for the last game, didn't play. But more than likely he will now play because they're just going to sign him all the way through 2026, it looks like. Or 2025, I think is the number I saw. This is just more bad agents. More bad agents.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what scares me the most about all of these things? And it's very real. It's like post 2026, a bunch of our best players just take the bag, right? And it's like 20, whatever, that 2012 to 2014 era all over again, where we have these good kind of, not young, but also not old guys, and they all come back to MLS, right? MLS just throws bags at all of them.
Dempsey.
And it's like, for somebody like Wes, like all of a sudden he gets offered $5-6 million a year in MLS, right? Because all of a sudden now he's marketable. He's an American coming home. And he's like, well, F this, man. If all I can get is 2.5. And that's very real, right? Like, this is my last, he's going to hit a point in 2026 where it's like, this might be my last big contract. That's how a lot of guys are thinking at that time. It's like, man, I'm in my, late 20s. I've got one really big contract. And that's not what's best for our national team. And that's something that's what I care about the most, honestly. It's what I'm most passionate about. And that sucks, right? Like, I don't think it's like the end of the world, like a lot of people do, right? But it's not you still are progressing and growing as a player. And most importantly, you're not getting complacent when you're playing at a high level. And I think guys coming to MLS, that's my worry, is like, it's just a lower level. It is, right? And guys get a little bit complacent, and that, carries over to how they're performing at all levels that they're playing soccer at. Like, I want all these guys there until they're 30 something, personally.
I don't even know if it's complacency. I think it's the day-to-day. Okay, I'll give you an example. So when I was at Carlisle High School, because I went to 3 different high schools, and I was playing against Carlisle, had a great tennis team. I mean, I was fighting for my life to be a top 3 seed, because the top 8 seeds usually played against the top 8 seeds of the other team, and then you added up the scores, etc. So I was battling, and then I moved to Lawrence Central in Indianapolis, and I was so easily the number 1 seed, and there was no one on that team that could compete with me. No one, not even close. Like the 2nd seed, I was blowing him away like 1-1 in a set. Like, you can't do that to yourself, because it makes you a worse player. If you're playing guys that weak, what you need to be playing day in, day out is just really good players. You need the competition. You need to be challenged for your position. Yeah. It pushes you. Like, I don't think there's anything in Dempsey's bones that would have made him complacent. I think he just, didn't have the competition level he needed in MLS to keep him at his very best. Although he was one of the few that did stay at his best. Well, Bradley and Altidore definitely sagged after year 1 in MLS.
Here's what I would agree with. There definitely are different type of players, right? Some players are so internally motivated, right, and so driven that it doesn't matter. They can be in any environment and they're still going to put the work in. But that is not all players. Definitely not Weston McKennie, right? Like, if Weston McKennie can coast, and when I say coast, I mean doing the extra work that athletes have to do to be great, right? There's going to practice in games, right? That's mandatory. And then there's doing all of the extra stuff that elite players have to do, right? If you're trying to fight for a spot, you can't just like go to practice and go to games. You need to, put extra time into your body. You need to put extra time into your skill development. You need to put extra time. Like, this is all the stuff that, like, that you just mentioned that, right? When you went to Indianapolis, it's like, well, if you're not going to work, your previous school, you needed to work hard. If you wanted to beat the people you had to play, if you wanted to maintain the spot on your team that you wanted to maintain, all of a sudden, if you go to Indianapolis,
the players were better.
And honestly, sometimes it's not even like a mark on you. It's like human nature is like, oh, I can do X work and get X results. Okay, that's fine. Right? Like, it's human nature to be like, I can do less work and still get paid the same. Okay, I'll do less work and still get paid the same, and so once again, you're going to need like very intrinsically motivated dudes. And some of our guys, I think, will be like that. And to your point, they'll be harmed because they're not playing against the same level comp game in and game out. And that's going to hurt them. Others, I think, will get complacent if they're not being challenged day in and day out in training and for a spot on the team. So, I think two parts of the same whole there, but this money, going back to the original point, this money thing, right? Which hopefully isn't going to be a trend across all of our players. I don't think it is, but that's the thing that can drive guys back to MLS that I'm hoping doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, I was told a long while back, and it's not something I posted on X, from an insider who said, there's no way McKennie's going to MLS. It's not happening. He's not going to do it. He knows 2026 is too important.
Not now. No, not now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going now. But like the problem is post 2026, in my opinion. It's like, nah, I kind of want a bag. Like you're gonna throw. Wait, I can get 5 years, 25 mil here, or I can get 5 years, 12 mil.
Yeah, but the
That's
reason,
really like a debate, like,
I mean, the reason the MLS teams are reaching out now, pre 2026, is as Infantino told them, you got to do something big building up to the World Cup. So they're like, okay, well, something big would be bringing back some of our biggest names here to MLS. No, that's the worst thing you could do. Do not do that, and do not listen to Infantino if that's what you thought he meant when he said that. Don't do it, because we do not need McKennie playing in MLS before 2026. He needs to be out there playing for Juventus, playing in Champions League, hopefully next season, and battling some of the best teams in Europe. That's what we need him to do. We also need him to lose some weight. I'm sorry. He doesn't look that committed. He came into Juventus's, listen, and I'm sick of this. People who are like, oh, quit saying that. There's no yes, there is a difference. Go look at a photo of of McKennie coming to Juventus camp last season, at the beginning of the season, and then go look at a photo of him playing for the United States men's national team in Copa America. And you tell me there's not a difference. That's crazy talk. That's all I'm saying. Crazy talk. And then we got the whole source confirms Weston McKennie has agreed to terms on a contract extensions from Jeff Carlisle with Juventus that will take him through the end of the 25-26 season. Okay, 26. Deal expected to be signed in the next 24 to 48 hours. So this is what they call calling a bluff, which is what they tried to do, and failing. His agent tried to call a bluff. McKennie tried to call a bluff, and nobody was willing to pay, and nobody signed up with a bigger check. And so now he's going to settle for the exact or close to or less than check he would have gotten in the earlier deal. I think it's about the same, actually.
Yeah, this is classic contract posturing, right? I mean, it's like, and really it ends up coming down to who's got the power. Like,
yeah.
And as a player, if you have the power, you can maybe, do it. He just doesn't seem like he had any right here, though. Like
he didn't, because if you're thinking about the teams that could afford what they were asking for, that is Juventus, his agent, and him combined, you're looking at the Bayerns of the world, maybe Dortmund at best in Germany. You're looking at any of the Premier League teams who look at his last Premier League stint. That's a stain on him. Nobody really wants to deal with that. And then, there was some minor bids coming out of Aston Villa, etc., but nothing that would come close to what Juventus, McKennie, and his agent were asking for. Like, who else can afford him? That what they were asking. No one could afford him. So sure. It's just like a ridiculous. They were living in Disneyland, and they ended up exactly where we all thought, where they were at the end of the Juventus season when he got benched. They were at the exact same point. He should have known reality then. Even though he had a good season, you're not making more money. Nobody's paying $30 million for you, and your agent's not getting this big fat extra added on check. It ain't happening. Your agent's an asshole, by the way. And so there you go. All right. We move on to John McKennie. I would not have gotten involved with this, but Vegas did.
Airborne.
Yeah. He said he needs to get in shape. He sucks now compared to his best self. Truth. Could you run an entire game like him? I highly doubt it. Wait a minute. I know you couldn't. John McKennie. Okay. First of all, we know this because of our connections. McKennie's not that close to his dad. I mean, he knows his dad. They talk, but he's really close to his mom. And I think John McKennie is on here way too much, honestly. And saying just because Vegas can't run an entire game like him, Vegas is not a professional soccer player, Adam. What a kind of comment is this?
I hate this. I hate everything having to do with people saying, where did you play? Right? It's the same idea, right? It's like, where did you play? It's like, oh, okay, so now I can only have an opinion. I can only post a public opinion if I played really high level like you did, right? And it's like, well, that's a bad way to create fan engagement, my friend. Like, if we can only care and have opinions if we played at your level, then you're going to have 150 fans and they're all going to be each other. Like I just hate it. Like, and also, like, I coach basketball at a decently high level. Like, you don't need to have coached college basketball to have a basketball discussion with me, right? To have a valid opinion about what you think about a team playing a 2-3 zone, right? Like, if my opinion's like, where did you coach? Well, it's like, debate it. Like, give me some facts. Give me, some things that like matter in this conversation. So yeah, I hate everything about that comment.
I do. I hate it. And we get it all the time. Like, well, we don't, but I mean, we've gotten it a couple times. Like, oh yeah, where you're criticizing Berhalter. What's your license and where did you coach?
Right. Yeah, right. Like, well, it also this totally ignores the guy's comment. Like, you didn't actually comment on whether or not you think your son's in shape. Like, yep. Is he in peak shape? Is he not? Like, and if you think he is, then talk about it. Oh, well, actually, he wears a chest monitor, and I could show you data from yesterday's practice, and he's running at this higher rate than he's ran his whole career. Like that. Like, shut up. Stop.
Yeah, it's like the commercial that they shot with him drinking the whatever that was in the shower. Yeah, that was nipples up for a reason. Trust me, nipples up. He was overweight. And this is what you call the fallacy argument of authority. And it's horseshit. It's like, okay, so every 4 years we go out and vote for people, or 2 years in between and vote for people. So are only politicians allowed to vote? No, citizens who are not politicians, who don't know as much as the politicians, are allowed to vote for who gets to represent them. And they're allowed to have an opinion about their opinions. That's called citizenship. It is no different in soccer. We watch the games. We all have all eyeballs. And it's amazing to me, my parents, who are not as addicted to soccer as I am, often have the most valid opinions watching U.S. soccer play.
Yeah.
And watching Berhalter coach. They're like, why do we play like this? This seems really, really like it's so predictable. I'm like, Mom, you just nailed it. It's called patterns of play. It's like, you don't need to be a genius to see that. You don't need to be, some sort of 5-time winner of the whatever award or a Golden Glove winner to know how to call a boxing match and know who's better at what. I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Do I need to be a really good actor to criticize somebody doing a poor job acting in a show? Like, I get I would be worse than that, but my take is that was acted poorly. That show was written poorly.
I mean, do I need to be a former porn actor to know that porn is really bad when I see a bad porn?
You'll know when you see it.
You just know it when you see it. I mean, so yeah, John McKinney, don't use those arguments anymore. And I would lay off the X in general about your son. It's fine if you want to defend him. And if you're Vegas, I probably wouldn't have got involved, but that's fine. He did, and I probably wouldn't have done that. And I go out of my way to avoid John McKinney on X. All right, here's the other transfer news. No. Yanks, what is this? What are we doing? Dual Nat? No, we're doing transfer news now, right? All right. Genk are close to signing, closing in on a deal to sign MLS talent Caden Pierre from Kansas City, 21-year-old fullback set to leave MLS for a new chapter in Europe soon. Oh, okay. I don't know dick squat about this guy. Do you?
Nope. Don't watch Kansas City. You won't pretend to. Some people do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I've watched hours of Caden Pierre. I mean, I know the name for the last 3-4 years, but haven't tracked him much. So yeah.
I mean, and there've been so many of these kids that have gone over to the smaller leagues like Belgium or smaller teams in Holland. They amount to nothing.
Yeah. And to be honest, those are all kind of like similar to what I said about football recruiting. Those are all kind of dice rolls too. And it's like, cool, good. You're going somewhere new, different league,
Good. Yeah.
Right. Like, and is that league going to be that much better than MLS? Like, No, a lot of
No.
people argue all those leagues are better. It's not like,
It's not.
but it's more like, are you putting yourself into like a developmental situation that's much easier to move up if you can thrive there, right? And it's like, I think all those steps can be really good. Once again, I hope they have people advising them who have enough knowledge to understand if that kind of move is going to be good or bad, right? I don't have that knowledge, but like I'm hoping the people around them do. Like, what is their fullback situation, right? What's the ins and outs of the club? How are they with developing young players? Have they had young Americans? Have they, all that kind of stuff? And then, and then you got to go do the work and get better, like at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Mackenzie go to Genk and have a pretty up and down season last season. That did not guarantee him any playing time from the national team, which is why he's now making what is a little bit of a step up, or I would say it's a medium step up to Toulouse, and we'll see how he does there in France. But like going to how long did Sasha Kleshin play for the best team in Belgium and never get called up?
Right.
Oh, sure. A lot. Because Belgium is not a significant step up from MLS at all. In fact, they might be equals. At least the top 4 or 5 teams could certainly compete in MLS, no problem in Belgium. But the bottom teams in Belgium are absolutely dog shit. I'm 100%. Sorry. That is just a fact. And if you don't think so, I'm sorry. Now, are the bottom teams in MLS dog shit like Chicago has been for years? Yes, they're dog shit too. But I would actually pick Chicago dog shit to beat the worst team in Belgium's dog shit bottom. So, I don't know. Call it what you will, but I think Belgium I'm glad he's going to go try it. That's great, because if he does well there and you're a fullback, especially if you're a left back, which everybody salivates for across Europe because there's not many good ones, then, there's a chance you could take a step up, even beyond Toulouse if you really prove yourself. But yeah, I'm not going to fault this player for trying this, and I don't even know who the hell he is, honestly, and Kansas City fans can ring on if they want. Okay, hold on here. Whoa. Griffin Yao would destroy MLS. I don't think so.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Might do well.
He might do well. I don't think he'd destroy it, though. And by the way, Griffin Yao, this season so far, I know it's only been 1 game. And then we saw him in the Olympics, that last game when he finally got to start. He was great before that. Don't get me wrong. Griffin Yao, though, is a hot and cold player. And we saw that last season with him. So he needs to build consistency, I think, is where we need to go with Griffin Yao. But does he have some skills to pay the bills? I think he does. But we need consistency out of Griffin Yao. And he's a young player, so of course that's his issue. Young players always fight with the consistency issue. Sorry if I'm talking too much, but I'm just barking in on some of these comments. All right, let's go on to, oh boy, the big one, Tanner Tessman. The translation says these idiots can't even put Olympique Lyonnais, like they can't do like the basics. They're just going to put OL. OL has tackled its midfield priority, Tanner Tessman. So Leon, the USA captain at the Olympics, the 22-year-old, God, that's so small, player has already agreed with OL. What the hell is wrong with you people? All that remains is to convince his club in Venice, where he has 1 year left on his contract. I don't know if you followed this at all, but it got really ugly, Adam.
I did a little bit, from the outside, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, and here's what Hercules said. He says there's some dirty shit going on behind the scenes. Hercules Gomez said. He said, listen, I've been in this situation where they want to get rid of you. They want to get the money. They want the money. And that you, however, have been really stubborn and your agent have been asking for way too much. And so, especially your agent. And so you're kind of screwing us over, making, whatever money we're going to make. And so now we're really pissed at you. And So then they basically put an announcement that Tanner Tessman was banned from the team. He wasn't an option for the coach, and that he'd be sitting on the sidelines and not playing, wearing civilian clothes for the rest of the season. And so maybe this is the deal that gets it all done and gets it settled. But again, Bluff, his agent, Tessman's agent, by the way, also asking for a ridiculous amount of money in the deal. And he screwed him over at Fiorentina. He screwed him over at Milan. And now we're at a point where we're running out of time. So they're going to make whatever deal they can make. They're going to take the little, because Lyon, do they really need Tanner Tessman? Not really. He's a good player. Is he a locked-in starter there? Not really. He'll have to fight his ass off to start and play games there. And that's fine. So I'm fine with the move. All I'm saying is, who's your agent? And make sure you got a good one. Make sure you got a good one.
Yeah. And I mean, Lyon's a team, right? They've historically been a Champions League level caliber team and really good, kind of going way back. But, they've kind of like landed, I feel like, 5 to 10 in the last, really 7-8 years. I feel like that's where they've been for the most part, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it in front of me. And I think like it's a good level. Like, listen, if he can get there and establish himself and play, it's a really nice step up for him. Feels way more realistic than Milan in terms of his next step. And I know the Milan deal, people were saying, was caveated by, he would actually stay with Venezia and play this season with them. If Lyon's all in on him, I like the move. I feel like it feels a little bit like when De La Torre went to La Liga. It kind of was like, is that guy good enough to play at that level? And it's like, he is.
Yep.
And it's like, I'll be honest, I didn't watch Tessman a ton last year. I watched him more 2 seasons ago. But I did watch him a little bit, and I think he is getting better. I think there's a tiny bit too much hype in terms of what I've seen out of him from people. But to your point, like your question's valid. Like, is he going to play at Lyon? Like, it feels like that's definitely going to be a challenge for him. But listen, good for him. Step up into new environments. And there's a lot of players like that, right? That I think a lot of us who have 3 kids like I do and can't watch 88 soccer games a week like I could when I was 24.
I can now, Adam. My kids are out of the house.
I can't wait, man. I'm gonna probably watch way more soccer in about 12 years as well. But my point is, like, I just unfortunately don't have time to watch 30 Tanner Tessman games, right? I do want to watch some soccer, and that's not going to take priority. So it's kind of like Johnny, right? Like, I watched a little Johnny when he was in Brazil. People I know and trusted liked him way more than I did. And I kind of was like, oh, okay. I haven't seen that yet. And that's kind of how I felt when Johnny went to La Liga. I was like, oh, how's this going to go? Like, feels like this could be a challenge for him. And man, he stepped right in and thrived. And so would be cool if that happened with Tessman. That's my main point, right? It would be really cool if, like, by mid-season he was establishing a role. It would prove to me for sure that he's better than I probably think he is.
I think that Johnny's technically better.
Oh, Johnny's better than him. No, don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing.
No, I agree.
I'm more comparing this, that just like not knowing enough about a player. They're playing in a league that not a lot of us watch every game. And then all of a sudden they're moving into a high level league. And it's like, how's that translation going to go?
Yeah. I mean, my concern with Tessman and I have the same concerns in some ways that Tack does, is that sometimes he's a little slow on the turn. Would he be better center back at 6'2"? I really think he would be a really great center back.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I'd be interested to see somebody try that with him. So we'll see what happens. Could he be a really good CDM? Yeah, I mean, it's not like Maloney is like the fastest guy in the world, Leonard Maloney, who, by the way, played today for 30 minutes for Heidenheim in the UEFA Conference League, and they won. They didn't start all their starters in that, by the way. It's a really crappy team they played. But I do think that Tanner Tessman is still once he gets comfortable in whatever setup and his teammates he has, he can be very effective. And he was the best player on that Venezia team last season. Let's not, I'm not writing that off. I think that's important. that's kind of why I was hoping he would stay and play, because I think that gives Venezia the best chance to maybe stay up this season. And now we're just going to be watching Busio, who currently has an injury, so he'll probably be out for another 2 weeks or a week or so. So we won't get to see Busio play for Venezia. But I had that Venezia game all queued up, last weekend. And I'm like, I went in and I'm like, looked at the starting lineups, like, no Busio, no Tessman. Okay, I'm not watching that game. It's not going to happen. So, but best of luck to him wherever he goes. I think Lyon's not a bad move. He'll get to learn French. And so now he's probably learned some Italian. Now he's going to learn some French. He's going to get challenged there more than he got challenged at Serie B. And we'll see what happens. All right.
Yeah, and I agree. Liam Davis in the comments, Johnny's significantly better. I think we all agree with that. I mean, Johnny's a full level up, if not 2 levels up from where I feel like Tessman is. And then I think somebody else, I think kind of is where I am, right? It's like, somebody else in the comments I saw say, sorry if I'm not naming him right now, I can't find it, but so like, hey, I don't quite see it with Tessman, but I hope I'm wrong. And that's kind of where I am, right? Like, I've watched him with a lot of hope based on what a lot of people that I know and respect have said. And every time I've watched, I've been like, okay, I mean, yeah, like he's not bad. But I'm not seeing like the immediate has to be called in. I haven't seen that yet.
So Fumar's saying that Busio is better than Tessman. I would only say this to that, Fumar. There is no way that Busio was a bigger part or more important part in Venezia getting promoted last season than Tessman. He was the heartbeat of the team. Do I think that Busio eventually had a good season after being not a starter at the beginning? Yeah, I think he showed resilience, and I'm really proud of him. And I think that's good. That's fine. But I don't think that Busio in general, he played a different position, by the way, so it's not really comparable. It's hard to compare that apples to oranges, but right now I'd say Tessman is a more physical, more adaptable player in the midfield than Busio. And but Busio, when he played in the Olympics, he's like the best player on the game before he got injured. So say what you will, hard to say. All right, we're going to move on. Let's see. We got we're coming near the end, folks. Okay, here we go. Top 3 things Poch has to do to evolve the U.S. men's national team. I think you've already kind of had this discussion in some way, so I'll let you start. What's like one of the top three things that Poch has got to do?
Establish a compete culture. Like, he needs to come in right from the jump, and it's like everybody's got to compete for everything they have. And in all honesty, I am even so open to that I'm going to give him a lot of leeway on who he plays, who he starts, who he calls in, because I think any good coach worth their salt is going to be challenging guys in the first few camps that he has with them, and is going to be willing to take some guys who maybe we all think are for sure starters and move them to the bench just to challenge them a little bit. And we don't know what's happening in training, and so I want to compete culture. And compete culture means we might not see what we all feel like is the best 11 every single game, because any good coach, I think, is going to be challenging guys in different ways, which might include pulling them to the bench and bringing them off the bench to motivate them, and sometimes just to send a signal, right? Just to let nobody's off limits here, right? But that's it. I think we need to get back to that. I think we did have that under Berhalter pretty early in the tenure, and I think I'll use the word again, I think things got a little complacent for a lot of guys in the mix. And that's what happens when you have a coach for a long time too, just to be fair, right? It's why I don't necessarily love second, cycle guys. It's because that's what can happen. You get comfortable with the players you like, they get comfortable with you, and everybody kind of stagnates. So
you need
stagnation.
You need a new voice, right? You just need it. And
this is going to mix it up, get it moving, right?
And this is the new voice, and there will be new standards, and there will be nobody coming into this is going to know how safe they are. And that's how it should be. That kind of pressure needs to be applied. You're going to have to fight for your starting role. I mean, probably not Pulisic, I think, but I don't like the whole idea of giving starters. So, but Pulisic's, he's as long as he's playing well at AC Milan, he probably will be. but I do want to see more competition being built up. But that's not all on Poch either. These players that are going to compete for these positions need to also step up, because otherwise, you're left as your backup for, and I'm not criticizing Joe Scally, but your backup to Dest is Joe Scally. I mean, not that you can get another Joe Scally, but Dest, but it would be nice if you could find a more like for like match, right? But that also depends on how Poch plans to play.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different story. I do want to give John here, because people who disagree with us, we like to bring up Busio is washed per Derek from over a year ago. I never said he was washed. What I said is, and I will quote, I don't know if he'll ever be a major contributor to the U.S. men's national team. That's what I said.
That's a fair take to this day. I mean,
we're loaded at midfield.
I wouldn't put money on him ever penetrating the USMNT lineup again. I wouldn't put money on it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm certainly not putting the stakes on it.
Right. Who's he going to be out? Musa, McKenny, Adams, Reyna.
Chad, what's up, Pete? Yeah, well, I don't know. If you had to go one way or the other, I'd love to see everybody in the chat. I'd be interested to hear everybody's thoughts on this. If you were forced, right, to bet $10,000 on whether or not Busio is ever capped again, would you bet yes or no? I'm interested in that. I don't feel like it's a sure yes for me. I need to really think about that. And when I say capped, I mean in a competitive game, not some random friendly, not a January camp, a competitive match. And I think I'm putting my money on no if I have to go yes or no.
Yeah, I think he might be called up. I don't think he's ever going to be a major contributor, but that will be.
Cap means playing, right? Is he going to play in a Nations League, a Gold Cup, a World Cup?
It's too loaded, and we haven't even mentioned Johnny Maloney, guys playing at a much better, higher level than he has, or so far. So
a lot of yeses. A lot of people believe in him, I think, more than I do. But yeah.
Oh, that's fine. They're allowed to,
Sure,
but we're
absolutely.
allowed our opinion as well. And right now, I'm just not seeing Busio contributing into what is our best position out there right now, currently, which is midfield with the depth. And we're not even. We might get rid of Luca De La Torre soon, because nobody knows where he's going to go, because Celta Vigo have obviously thrown him overboard with his legs tied. So they're just trying to get rid of him. So he might fall into the abyss. We don't know. But even if you throw him off the boat, there's Maloney too. So you got Musa, McKenny, Adams, Reyna, not Luca De La Torre, but Cardoso. That's 5 guys already that he's got to beat out for a position. And that goes for Tessman too, not just Busio.
For sure.
You've got to be exceptional at this point to get into a starting role for the U.S. men's national team. I'm not saying Busio's never going to be called up again. He'll get maybe something, but I don't know if he'll ever start a game and be a significant contributor to the U.S. men's national team. That's all I said. I never said he was washed. Never said that. Never said he was washed.
And his development could still go multiple ways, which is why I don't feel great about betting. I wouldn't actually place the money, right? Unless you held a gun to my head. It's more of a gun to the head bet, right? Because he's still in a place age-wise and developmentally where there's 100% more for him to grow into. It's just about kind of whether or not you see it and believe in it. I'd lean a little bit more no than yes there, but
yeah. So Johnny for $2. Thank you, Johnny / Larry. How many Viking defenders gets called up under Poch? Listen, you're really into this Viking thing. I'm not really into it. I don't know what the hell that means. I guess that means little white ass people or whatever. Listen, Johnny, I need Brett here.
Is he talking about like Zimmerman kind of, or
it must be. Or Reem.
I got you. All right.
Reem.
I'm with it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I have Brett here. Brett and Larry have a good relationship and they understand each other.
Nice.
And I more have a relationship with Colin. That's the other, so we you have to have interpreters and understand.
Tim Ream. Yeah, there's a couple of Vikings. All right.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Oh,
is Aaron Long like Viking adjacent? Like,
I don't know. That's a good question. Was Pete in here somewhere?
He was in here somewhere. I saw him say what's up.
There he is. What's up, guys? Hey, Pete. Thank you for being here. I know it is only 7:12 where you are now, so I hope you're getting a rest and you're taking it all in, and life is good. Would have had you on here tonight too, but listen, I mean, I've been on your show. You've been on ours. It's been like back and forth. It's too much, right? It's too much of us together. And we need to give people a break of that. And that's why Adam is the perfect person to be here tonight, for sure. So thanks for coming on. Let me hide that. All right. Let me see. What else we got? So the three things. One of the things I would mention is bust up the Players Council, the Leadership Council.
Yeah.
That's got to go. That's got to be up there along with what you said. And
I did a thread about like a lot of different like leadership styles in terms of like how coaches try and implement leadership structures, solo captain, multiple captains, leadership. And I thought it was really interesting when I was a coach, because I was always thinking about that, right? And I tried, like, I didn't call it a leadership council, but I tried those kind of things, leadership groups. Mm-hmm. And I always struggled with them personally. I knew a lot of people who like literally lived and died by them, and they worked really well for them. And I don't doubt that. But for me, I always found they created like way too big of a group on the team that were leaders, which created, the more people you name leaders, the more people feel left out, right? Yeah. If it's two captains and there's 20 other guys, everybody's kind of like, okay, cool. There's a little bit of a hierarchy, but you know, we don't have, 10,000 presidents of the United States of America, right? Like we don't,
right.
Like so that was just my feel, right? I always wanted more defined kind of smaller group of leaders and then develop other people. But I agree with you. I think even if Poch likes leadership councils, he should just go the other way, because sometimes you just need to mix stuff up, right? It's like, this is what you guys have been doing for a while. We're going to do it differently now.
Here's the weird thing, Adam. If you're on a team, and I was on 3 different soccer teams in high school, and you already know who the leader of your team is anyhow. Most of the players already know who the leader of the team is. And that guy doesn't get the armband. The rest of the team immediately goes, what the hell's going on here? We all know who the team leader of this team is, right? So why is this guy getting the armband when this guy isn't, when we all know he's the natural leader of this team? So, there's always a risk that you take when you're giving away leadership roles to teams. You better get it right. You better have some sort of, symbiotic relationship or an understanding of the team to know who the real leader of that team is. Because if you pick the wrong guy, you've already alienated everybody. Yeah. And let's say you pick a group of the wrong guys, and then they exert way too much power over the coach and way too much influence over the coach, which would be a better word. You've kind of screwed yourself, right?
And that's the thing, that's the other issue with a council in a national team structure, right? A national team pool in its nature is more fluid, right?
Yeah.
It's not like a club. It's like, we know who is on this team playing this year, and we're all together every day. We can kind of create a council might work better in that environment, as opposed to like, oh, in 2019, I put Jordan Morris and these guys on this initial leadership council. As a coach, you're almost going to feel more inclined to bring that guy in, because you're looking at the boxes and you're like, well, he's a part of the leadership council, right? And it can lead you to like feel boxed into bringing certain guys who maybe soccer wise, have aged out or don't belong at that moment or whatever, right? And I feel like there might have been some of that, right? Where we're bringing leadership council guys and we're all going, man, he keeps bringing these MLS guys. And really behind the scenes, it could have been, well, I got to bring my leaders, right? I've invested in them as leaders. But when you do a leadership council of 7-8 guys, that's a lot of guys you're locked into, right? Are you sure all those guys are going to belong for the next 4 years, right? Like, because that's going to be pretty important when you're thinking about leaders. Like, you don't want to, because you can't leave a leader out. That's tough, right? It's like, oh, I told all these guys for years that player X is a leader. I'm not even going to bring him anymore, right?
Yep.
Like,
no,
I don't know.
So true.
You got to pick a couple guys, and you better be sure they're guys that you also want for an extended period, because it's going to be tough to leave that kind of guy out.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah. Colin Reese says our midfield's not loaded. Not loaded like a top 4 country in the world, not loaded. No. But I'm sorry. I think most
what you're talking about our pool. He's not talking about loaded compared to top nations. It's a pretty easy one, right? You're just talking about in our pool, right? That is one of the harder positions to break into. We have more depth quality depth at that position than anywhere else. That's totally fair, right? Where else do we have more quality depth than midfield?
Colin, we're just going to disagree. I mean, that's going to be the hardest position to break into when you're talking about, are you telling me Moose is going to suck this season at AC Milan? Are you telling me that we're going to see a real fallout from Cardoso? Are you telling me that McKennie's, now that he's back on the squad, is going to be a total disaster at Juventus after having a great season? Are you telling me once Adams is healthy that he's not a competitor? Or are you telling me that Maloney is going to be total shit?
Tillman, right? I mean, Tillman. There's
Reyna.
It really is. Reyna, you didn't name, right? Adams, did you name Adams? I don't even know.
I was getting there. Yeah.
I mean, it's of course, that is a deep position for us. So easy one. I think we had a super chat from Johnny. Just, you might have missed it. But hey, I'll give you my second one real quick. And it's really easy. It's just simplify soccer. Right. That's my hope is. And I have tended to think that Poch teams play relatively simply. And I don't mean that as he's not coaching or he doesn't. I just think that it's always struck me. And the couple tactical videos I've watched through the years on his style is a lot of it is hey, we're going to play in a way that allows players freedom. And that idealism is something that I'm just excited to see. You know, and I think he is a coach who when you watch, especially the Tottenham teams, which is really where he's had the most ability to imprint himself on a team, right? He was there for multiple years, over the course of time, I loved watching that team in attack, right? I mean, I love the way that he developed those players and developed, I think, the connectivity between them in the final third. And certainly I don't think scoring was an issue for the prime Tottenham team. So,
yeah, I mean, he's going to have a lot shorter time, but he doesn't seem to be a massive patterns of play guy. I think he likes to be, to have some freedom going forward, which is what we need, and to not counter, but certainly transition more quickly into offense out of defense, which is something we need desperately. That was a horrible issue with Berhalter. We had a horrible time transitioning from defense to offense, and we waited around too long, and we kicked it around the horseshoe and, kicked it back to the goalkeeper and started all over again. We did that countless painful times. So I'm hoping for a different look from Pochettino for sure. And then Johnny says for $2, will you mutiny when Maloney takes over leadership? No, I would not. Sure. And I think that Maloney is actually if you look at the way he plays for Heidenheim, he's basically a third center back / CDM. He plays pretty gosh darn deep in front of the back 2 center backs. Really deep. He really looks like a third center back often.
So I just looked it up. The Tottenham was top 3 in goals for.
Yeah.
After his first season, so his second, third, fourth year, in that idea, right? This is a guy that, and like you said, certainly different with the national team, but he's got the ability to get a team together and figure out how to play, in a more exciting attacking fashion and maximize goal scoring opportunities. So I'm excited.
And here's what I would say is, even though the PSG didn't work out for him, and the Tottenham thing was good for a few years and then wasn't, and they lost his job. The patterns of play were not predictable. They were not predictable. You didn't really know how Tottenham was going to go forward. You just didn't know. They were opportunistic and thoughtful and creative. That's what we need. We've got creative guys on the team. We got Pulisic. We got Reyna. We've got a Tillman who can be creative. So it's all about how he interprets this And we don't know. We haven't seen it yet, so we don't know. I'm sure it's not going to all start out smooth and buttery. No, it's probably going to be a little bumpy at the beginning. I'm willing to give this guy some time.
Yep.
I really am. And we should all be willing to give him time. Leverdad says for $4.99, Poch being hired makes our players have no more excuses for stagnation. Even Musa said that in an interview yesterday. It's time for players to put up or shut up. No need to hold our boys accountable. Yeah, all the players are saying that now. Adams, Musa, like every player getting interviewed now, Pulisic, they're all saying this. This is now shut up or put up time. There are no more excuses. We got to come out. We got to put our big boy pants on and make it real. We're going to do one more slide here and probably call it a night. This one I had to bring up because with Max was on the show, this is what I was going to talk about. All right, with him. But he says, many believe Pochettino being Euro-based is okay since almost all our current U.S. men's national team squad is based there. That is part of the job. The rest requires him to work here. Poch needs to plant roots in the USA or this will go sideways. What? I would imagine he eventually does. And then Ian Dark, is who he's quoting here, says Pochettino is a coup for the USA going into a home World Cup. He is a top-level operator. But not being in USA base is poor optics? What? Hope he puts that old guts and fight onto the squad. They are not good enough to succeed without it, despite the hype. Think Tyler Adams knows it. All right, what do you think about this, dude? To me, this is insane that he needs to be here. What? I was saying he needs to be here like 5 to 10% of the time. The rest of the time, he needs to be in Europe, scouting our players, watching their games, getting to know who they are as players.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I think I'm sure there is some productive stuff that's going to come from him, like being here and, organizationally, having some impact on others. But like, as a guy who's coaching the national team and honestly, probably coaching the national team for 2 years, I guess we'll see. But like, I wouldn't doubt if it's just a 2-year thing for him, right? That seems pretty plausible. I don't need him deeply ingrained in the U.S. soccer system. Like there's not some magical sauce he needs to learn by coming to the office every day, like there just isn't. Like he needs to figure this team out as quickly as possible. He needs to develop relationships as quick as possible. That does matter, right? Like,
sure.
You don't need a kumbaya and all that stuff, but you need to know your players. You need to be going to games, figuring out how they tick, starting to develop some dialogue with certain guys. And to your point, no, I'm sure he doesn't know our player pool in and out, right? Like, be it training, talk to, he has great connection. I'm sure he knows a lot of it. You know what I'm saying, though? He hasn't scouted our players specifically for years, hasn't been in camps with them. So he needs to get as familiar as possible. And that's like, hey, leverage the relationships you have with European managers, right? Be there, go to training, meet with the coaches. What's that player like? What's it like to coach him? What does he respond to? What does he not respond to, right? That's what a really good coach is going to do, is he's going to learn from the people who coach these guys day in and day out, and then go see some training sessions, go see games, right? And we've got a lot of players over there to do that for. To me, that is the full-time job for the next year and a half in preparation of the World Cup.
How many MLS
It's
players?
Not being here talking to Don Gar. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't need him in the U.S. talking to the U.S. Like him and Crocker having daily stand-ups, like
How
in person.
ridiculous.
Like, I'm good. Like, what is that?
I mean, first of all, how many players, MLS players, are going to make the next squad? Maybe 2. Okay, a goalkeeper and maybe one another player. All right, maybe 3, 2 goalkeepers for all we know at this point, because we're in a goalkeeper problem right now, no goalkeeper crunch. Okay, that's fine. That doesn't take him. When 90% of the players on this team are playing in Europe, he should spend 90% of his time in Europe tracking them, watching their games, calling them after the games and talking about what he saw and what he visions going forward for the team and what their role is. That's what he needs to do. And if you want to have a press conference with the U.S. press, you could do that right over this, right here, StreamYard. You can go over
1,000%. And well, it's like the reason this comment I thought was so ridiculous as well, I didn't comment on it, is like there's two options here. It's live in the US and do all that stuff remotely or do it less, right? Because if you're living here, you're just not going to go to as many games. You're not going to try. It's not as easy to travel. It's so easy to travel within Europe, right? It's like traveling within the US, right? It's like a flight from one country to another is like going from, Florida to the Midwest, right? Like that's, and so if he's there, he's going to do more of that. And he's going to, do all the US soccer meetings remotely, right? I would much rather option 2, do all that stuff live, go ingrain yourself in our player pool. And, we'll tell you when a couple meetings are that we need you to jump on so we can talk through things. And to your point, why don't you come over for a couple weeks at a time and, we can engage in all whatever they need to do. HR onboarding, I don't know, whatever else
that
requirements
is.
are. Like, that's BS, man.
I mean, listen, and during Berhalter's, especially his second stint, what are the only press conference we got out of Greg Berhalter? It was pregame and post, and that was it. Okay? So, I mean, if we have a game in the United States, Poch is going to be here. He's going to do the pregame and the post, same as Greg Berhalter.
Correct.
The rest of the time, he's going to be out there scouting our players in Europe. 95% of those players are going to be making up the roster anyhow. So what is the big deal that he needs to have an apartment up a Don Garber's asshole? I don't understand.
And poor to respond to the Ian Dark comment, poor optics to who? Like to U.S. soccer? Sure. Right? To officials in U.S. soccer? Okay. But like, I don't know where Berhalter lived. I don't know what Berhalter did.
I have no idea where he lived. Yeah.
I don't care. He could have lived in Germany. He could have lived in Hawaii. Like, I literally have no idea. So I don't think it's poor optics to fans. I honestly don't think it's poor optics to media, right? Nope. I think maybe what he's talking about is it's poor optics inside the old boy circle, right? Like,
I think you're right, because otherwise, like, if we look back to Jurgen Klinsmann, I don't think 90% of the fans knew he lived in California. I think they all assumed he lived in Germany. Most people probably assumed he lived in Germany and didn't give two about it. No about it. None. Absolutely zero. I'm so good at muting myself. So I don't think anybody cares that he's not here at least 50%. Nobody needs him here 50%. And Max is backed off of this, and I wish he would have come on with us for this segment, by the way, because I would like to really get some sense out of this from him and Ian Dark, because none of this in this digital era makes any sense. You could go talk to all U.S. media, as U.S. Soccer does constantly behind our backs and doesn't do public comments. I mean, when's the last time you see JT Batson stand up or Cindy Parlucone stand up in front of a stand and answer questions from U.S. media, like off the, just no rules. Ask what you want. We'll take it and we'll answer it all. No, it's very selective people that they call on, and they don't even do that, even though they already know they can call on selective people, right? They don't even do that. They make all these decisions behind the scenes. They leak it to Doug McIntyre and whomever, Jeff Carlisle, whack, 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 whack. And that's what we get, right? So don't pretend like there's this big face of the media that he can't do from Europe, because he can do it. You can do a Zoom interview from Europe, and maybe he only needs to be here 5 to 10% of the time. The way these guys are talking, it's like he needs to fucking live up Don Garber's asshole. And it's just ridiculous. Or up JT Batson's asshole, which he doesn't want, by the way. JT Batson doesn't want anything up his asshole, and nor does Matt Crocker. That's all I'm saying.
Man, I just want to say, I know Colin Reese is listening. I just miss Colin Reese takes. I'm glad to be here and in your comment section, because he blocks me and I never get to see his takes. And they're so opposite of my takes, right? Mm-hmm. Which I'm sad he blocks me because of that. Because we used to debate pretty kindly back and forth, and then he got a little violent with the rhetoric and then blocked me. But he says that you're wrong. Colin says you're wrong. You can throw the comment up there if you scroll back a little bit.
I'm going to find it. Yeah.
Yeah, he says that you're wrong, and he said he shouldn't be scouting our players in Europe. I assume he means our players in Europe aren't better than our players in MLS, or that there's a bunch of players in MLS that he needs to come scout and put on the national team. But I, once again, couldn't disagree anymore. Like our best players are all in Europe, and that is from watching games, Colin, not guessing, right? And our players in MLS are certainly not close right now to being on our roster.
So I can't find it, but I will say this to Colin and other people who disagree with us, not just Colin, but this isn't personal. Sure. This is just our opinion. Like, you have your opinion, I have mine. And that doesn't mean I hate you or dislike you or think you're a schmuck, because you just don't you don't agree with me. I'm totally fine with that. That's the part of this business when you're doing a show that's all about having opinions, right? And I think that's where we need to get at. Like, people often think like we don't like Max. No, Max has been on our show multiple times. We love Max. We just disagree with Max. Wallace has been on our show. We disagree with Wallace. He came on and we hammered him with some questions and he answered them and we moved on. I mean, we've had lots of people on our show that have we brought Tact on to have a debate about shit we disagreed with.
Yeah,
and
sure.
That's how it should be. Like, it's not personal. I haven't called Tact any names. I have called Wallace names in the past, which, I had to.
Colin's comment, I think you'd actually like that. He said, Derek, he's supposed to find new players, not just jack off all your mercenaries in Europe that you want on the team.
Well, here's the thing.
Comment, actually.
I wish I could find it, but here's the thing about that. There are a lot of Americans playing in 2 Bundesliga and U19 Bundesliga and U21 Bundesliga and youth teams.
And then we have another going to Genk. We just learned potentially, right? Yep. So yeah, all over the place. To your point,
right? Let me see if this is it. Derek, you're supposed to find new players, not just jack off all your mercenaries in Europe. No, I agree, and there are players to find, and I think we're not totally ignoring them. I think Max Dietz, for instance, from Greuther Fürth, if he doesn't actually move on to a Bundesliga team this season from Greuther Fürth, I'd be really surprised. But he might not. But I think he's a great future center back. And those are people we need to keep an eye on. They're not all in Europe. Yes, we should keep an eye out on there's some great players, obviously, playing young players playing in MLS. And that's why I watch MLS outside of LA Galaxy, like Jalen Neal. We're going to keep an eye on those kind of guys. And we just saw Josh Winder score a goal for Benfica B. Yes, he's in Europe, but he's an MLS product. Like, I don't really care where they come from. I don't care where they come from. All I'm trying to do is find the best players going forward, and we're all looking forward to 2026. Like, that's what we're doing here. By the way,
just being realistic, though, there's like 14 or 15 guys that I don't think are overly debatable. And the job that Pochettino has at its core is to get those 14 or 15 guys to play really well together, right? Yep. And then fill in the gaps, right? The gaps would be like, who else is out there? And to your point, it could be a young guy that he scouts and sees that this guy's going to be really good within 2 years, right? And I believe in it for whatever reasons, XYZ, yep. Right? Fine. But at the end of the day, a lot of his time needs to be figuring out how he's going to coach, who are the best guys. And like, that's not some 2017, 2018 challenge, right? Back then, the challenge really was like, who are the young guys around the world that are going to make up this team in 4.5 years? The challenge now is like, we kind of know the core and we got to get the core to play way better together than we just saw them play. Right. And and then inject some new blood in there as well. But man, I don't think it's coming. I don't think it's going to be some 18-year-old or 19-year-old in MLS. I mean, I don't know, maybe a French piece or two, who knows, but
it could be. I mean, there could be 1 or 2 guys that surprise us by 2026, sure. But I need to see it first. I just need to see it. And I haven't seen it. And when I see it, I'll know it.
But the core of the argument is, where should he live, right? And like,
I mean,
he shouldn't be living here to try and find a couple diamonds in a rough, right? He should be living where a majority of the talent is that he needs to now learn, scout, figure out.
Yeah, and I think that's like 80-20, 90-10, whatever you want to do there, but it ain't 50-50. And these comments made it sound like he's got to fucking live right here up Matt Crocker's butthole. And I think that's ridiculous, and it's not necessary, and I hope it doesn't happen, because most of his time, most of it is going to be spent scouting our top 15 players in Europe, and that's what they are. And is he going to spend some time, especially for center back and for left back and goalkeeper, trying to find someone better than what we got right now? I think he should, and I think he will. Yeah. And I think he's just going to balance his time here. But this whole freak out shit, sorry, Max, but that was a freak out post about him having to live here. Same with you, Ian. I love you, Ian. I love Ian Dark. But that seemed weird to me. It's like, do you know what era we're living in here? And like, we got Zoom, we've got StreamYard, we've got all kinds of ways to connect with the media and people and players playing overseas, and ways to watch their games and watch tape where you don't actually have to even go to the game. So that's a ridiculous thing. What is he supposed to, go on all the parades at major cities with his dick out? I don't understand what he's supposed to do, Adam. I don't get it. And I don't know how he's supposed to be an ambassador, and in what way that ambassador was Berhalter an ambassador for the team? No, he wasn't.
That I've actually seen that a bunch. I think somebody might have just put that in the comments. I might have missed it because I saw a little bit of conversation going on that was kind of surrounding this, which is like, I need our coach to be, this head of U.S. soccer holistically, right? And be fully invested in the top down. And like, I'm not saying that's not a bad idea when it comes to like whoever the next coach might be. But right now we need a coach in the short term who can, do the equivalent of like, when you hire a coach sometimes to keep you up, right? In club soccer. But and like we need that's done to maximize results. And right now we need a coach to help us maximize results. And I hate this thing. Like, you don't think he's going to care? Like, if he's coming here and coaching us, he's going to care. He's going to care about the results. He's going to care about the players. He's going to care, about doing as well as he can. I don't need him to have like deep-seated American pride. I don't, at least. And I don't need him to like be thinking holistically about our organization. Right?
It's so ridiculous, Adam. Yes. I mean, this is just ridiculous shit. Okay. First of all, what does that even mean? Okay. So what is he got to do? Parades and wave American flags, have one coming out of his pee hole? I don't know what it means.
I think a lot of it is ridiculous. Be invested in the development system and be giving ideas about the development system. And that's just
not going to be his job.
That's just not what senior team coaches do. Like, they just don't do that. Like, a senior team coach's job in every country around the world is win with the senior team.
Yes.
That's it. Like, that's literally the job. And like, maybe there's a little bit of like say in like what's going on with U20s or, some youth teams that are a little bit closer because those guys, right. But like, I don't even think that's not necessary for me, to be honest with this job. I'm not saying that could happen at times. I get that, but I don't need that connection right now, especially. All that matters and all that's going to grow American soccer. Sorry if I'm not calling out who said this in the comments, but I agree with you. And I've said this before. What's going to grow American soccer is succeeding in 2026. Getting as far as we can. That's it. That grows American soccer.
Yes.
And if the coach never comes back to America again, I'm okay with it. Right?
Yes,
if a coach gets us to the semis and never comes back, I'll love him forever, wherever he lives.
You're so right. 2026 is it. That's all this guy's being hired for. He's not being hired to be the technical director of the 23s or the 21s or the 19. None of that shit. None of it. That's not why they're bringing Pochettino in. He is not taking a double role like Jurgen Klinsmann took. No, he's not. He's coming here with one focus, 2026 World Cup. That's it, folks. If you don't like that, then go hire someone else, because that's what he's coming, and that's what his job's going to be. Nothing to do with the technical shit, maybe on a very basic level, but he's not an overly technical guy, and it's not very far off base from what we've already been doing anyhow, right? Except for the fucking patterns of play that are stupid and ridiculous and predictable, which infiltrated all our youth teams and our women's team, which basically what's her face got rid of in the women's team. We don't play like that anymore. All right. And then I thought it'd been rid of from the Olympic team until the last game we played, when we went back to doing the same basic Berhalter ball and we got our ass kicked. So I don't think there's a requirement to play a certain way anymore, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Olympic coach, Mitrovic, decided to do the old basic bullshit 3-4-3-3 and play like that again, play Berhalter ball, was a complete disaster in that last game. Yeah. Complete disaster. And he hadn't played like that before. He used multiple different formations, different setups, different patterns of play. And then when it came to the big game, he totally choked and went back to whatever. But I think that's over. And I think that Pochettino coming on is not going to change that. I don't think he's coming there to be the technical director. I think he's coming there to lead this team, the big boy team, into something positive in the 2020s. That's going to be his only focus.
Yep.
So let's not get distracted by everything else. That's all I'm saying. All right. I think that's it. I think we had a great show, Adam, for 2 hours and 25 minutes, which I was thinking was going to be like 2 hours. Somehow we got to 2.5 hours.
It's good to be here, man. I appreciate the Straight Red community welcoming, man. And you guys have like the most passionate fan base in terms of guys who will come in and be here the whole time and engage in the chat. And it's cool. It's why I love popping in to watch, because I love watching the chat as much as I love watching you guys. Honestly, it's just like, it's like live Twitter, right? It's like live Twitter's going on in your chat, which is cool.
I get more of an opportunity to watch the chat when I'm not hosting, because Brett does all that, so I get to watch the chat more. But I didn't tonight. So sorry if I missed anybody or a great comment. I really apologize. I'm not good at this. I'm working on it. But for the almost 350 of you here on Twitter and on YouTube tonight, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it with your grandma. And lean over and, give your stepsister a peck on the forehead. She deserves it. She's a great gal. And you love her anyhow. But hey, man, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight, because it was a great show. Like, I knew it was going to be. That's why I asked you to come on. I just knew it was going to be good. I knew we were going to have a great discussion. So, all right, we'll be back on Monday. There's lots of soccer, by the way, coming up even tomorrow. We got Leeds and Aronson versus Sheffield Wednesday. We got Gladbach and Scally versus Leverkusen. Okay, I was going to say Celta Vigo, but we all know that Luca de la Torre is that's done for him at Celta Vigo. So, again, thanks to Adam for coming on in like a 2-day notice. Much appreciated, my brother.
My pleasure, man. Thanks, guys.
We will see you all, guys, on Monday. Have a great weekend of lots of soccer. Good night.